A routine bounty hunt in the West Texas badlands just became a one-man war for survival. Center Line. Chapter 1. The Ford Raptor chewed through the caliche, the suspension swallowing the ruts, spitting a white plume of pulverized rock across the scrub brush. Harlan Kessler kept the speedometer pinned at 40. Any faster, he risked snapping an axle on a hidden limestone shelf. Any slower, the midday West Texas sun would bake the truck cab into a convection oven. The Panasonic Toughbook, mounted over the center console, displayed a blank topographical map. A red dot blinked near the center. The screen corner flashed a red no signal icon. 12 hours ago, a cell tower in Presidio caught a momentary ping from Leo Finch's burner phone. Finch was a corporate accountant, embezzler, data thief. Men who spent their lives bathed in the glow of dual monitors did not survive long in the Chihuahuan desert. They made mistakes. They sought high ground for cell service. They panicked. Kessler crested a low ridge. The horizon spread out, a bruised purple line of mountains beneath an iron sky. Down in the basin, a column of oily black smoke stained the air. He killed the engine. Silence reclaimed the basin, vast and absolute, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine block. Kessler grabbed the Swarovski binoculars from the passenger seat. He rested his elbows on the steering wheel, framing the lenses against the glare. 2 miles down, a dry creek bed lined with twisted mesquite. A camp. An F-250 pickup sat centered in the clearing. Fire had gutted the cab. The tires had melted into black puddles over the scorched earth. No movement. No bodies visible from his angle. He dropped the binoculars. He racked the slide on the Sig Sauer P226 resting in his lap, checked the magazine, chambered around. Decocked it. Holstered the weapon on his hip. He started the Raptor, shifted into four-wheel low, and eased down the ridge. The scent hit him a quarter-mile out. Acrid, chemical rot. Burning upholstery, vaporized diesel, melted copper wire. It overpowered the ambient smell of sage and hot dust. Kessler stopped the Raptor 50 yards from the tree line. He left the engine running, the air conditioning blasting. He stepped out into the heat. 104 degrees. The air scorched the inside of his lungs. He walked the perimeter. He kept his hands clear of his sides, eyes tracking the shadows beneath the mesquite tangles. He read the violence coded in the dirt. The wind had not yet scoured the ground, leaving the narrative intact. A mess of overlapping tracks marred the creek bank. 2 distinct sets of tire treads. One set matched a heavy utility truck, deep aggressive lug patterns, dual rear wheels, wide stance. The other set belonged to a pair of ATVs. Maxxis Bighorns. Off-road racing tires. Finch drove a leased Hyundai Tucson. The burning F-250 belonged to someone else. Kessler circled the ruined truck. A 1999 Ford. The classic 7.3-liter Power-Stroke diesel. Ranchers in this basin treated those specific engines like religious relics, rebuilding them decade after decade. It took serious intent to burn an engine block that solid. The heat radiating from the chassis blistered the skin on his forearms. The paint had vaporized, leaving the steel wearing a coat of gray ash that flaked in the stagnant air. A cooking fire ringed with river stones sat 20 yards away. Someone had kicked an enamelware percolator into the dust. The ground stained the dirt, baked solid like asphalt. Kessler crouched. He pulled a bandana from his back pocket and wiped the sweat stinging his eyes. He studied the footprints. 4 men. Heavy tactical boots. Vibram soles leaving geometric waffle patterns in the fine silt. They moved with purpose. No wasted steps, no scuff marks indicating hesitation or panic. 2 boot sets flanked the campfire in an L-shaped ambush formation. The third secured the creek bed, holding an angle that cut off any retreat into the mesquite. The fourth held the high ground, on a limestone outcrop overlooking the site. Kessler moved up the slope, his boots crunching the brittle limestone. He swept the area near the truck's driver's side door. He found a pen. A Mont Blanc Meisterstick rollerball, the precious resin barrel cracked and oozing black ink into the alkaline dirt. Leo Finch carried $1,000 pen into a wasteland that cared nothing for signatures. It highlighted the sheer absurdity of the accountant's situation. Finch panicked, hired a local with a reliable power stroke to haul him across the border, and ran out of luck before he ran out of Texas. Kessler climbed to the outcrop. He found 3 brass casings gleaming in a patch of prickly pear. He picked one up. 556 NATO. Stamped with a military head stamp. He smelled the burnt cordite. He looked down at the camp from the shooter's vantage point. Overlapping fields of fire. Precision. This was not a cartel hit. Cartel coyotes sprayed lead and made noise. This crew executed a coordinated tactical breach. Kessler moved back down to the center of the camp. He found the drag marks. Twin furrows gouged the hardpan, cutting a straight line from the F-250's passenger door toward the spot where the heavy utility truck had parked. He knelt beside the grooves. Bootprints flanked the furrows. Roper style. Underslung heel, pointed toe, leather sole. The right heel struck deep into the soil. She planted her feet. She anchored her weight against the attacker. The left heel dragged, carving the earth. A woman. A local, wearing working boots, fighting a man wearing tactical gear. Kessler touched the dirt beside the right heel impression. A cluster of dark spots crusted the pale dust. Blood. Oxidized, turning the color of rust. A significant amount. Enough to indicate a blunt force strike to the head or a shallow blade wound. He rubbed the crusted dirt between his thumb and forefinger. Dry. The raid happened before dawn, giving the morning sun ample time to bake the moisture out of the blood and the dew out of the tire tracks. A glint of metal caught his eye near the camp's edge, half buried under a kicked clump of mesquite roots. Kessler dug it out. A titanium thumb drive case. Smashed flat by a tactical boot, the circuit board pulverized. Useless. But Finch carried titanium thumb drives. Finch obsessed over data security. Finch had been here. He hired the owner of the F-250 for transport. The tactical team tracked Finch, hit the camp, executed the extraction. But the woman. The Roper boots. Kessler tracked the drag marks to their termination point. The heavy truck tracks swallowed the boot prints. They loaded her into the back. He followed the departure tracks. The heavy truck and the 2 ATVs traveled north, carving deep into the arroyo, heading toward the canyon country. Badlands. A labyrinth of limestone-slotted canyons and sheer drop-offs where GPS signals died and satellite maps dissolved into pixelated static. Kessler returned to the Raptor. He opened the rear door and pulled an aluminum Halliburton case from the floorboard. He popped the latches. Inside sat a satellite phone, a trauma kit, topographical paper maps in waterproof sleeves, and a custom-built AR-10 rifle chambered in .308. He locked a 20-round magazine into the rifle well. He slung the weapon behind the passenger seat, accessible from the driver's position. He reached into the center console and retrieved his satellite phone. He dialed the contact number for Apex Resource Holdings Internal Security Division. The line clicked open. A digital hiss. Kessler. The voice lacked texture. Boyd Aris. Ex-military contractor, current corporate problem solver. Aris managed the search for Finch on the corporate end. Aris signed Kessler's contract. I found Finch's transport, Kessler said. He kept his voice level, revealing nothing. Burned out F-250. Creek bed off County Road 9. And Finch. Gone. A crew hit the camp. Tactical execution. 556 rounds. Coordinated overwatch. Silence on the line. The satellite delay added a half-second of empty space, but the pause stretched longer. Aris processed the information. Cartel. Aris asked. Cartel boys don't wear Vibram soles and maintain fire discipline, Kessler said. This was a private outfit. You lost the skip. I lost the camp. I have the tracks. Leave it. The instruction snapped through the speaker, hard and absolute. Finch is a corporate asset, Kessler. We recover assets. We do not chase local disputes into unmapped canyons. Contract terminated. Invoice the firm for your days in the field. A woman was at the camp, Kessler said. He watched a hawk circle the thermal updrafts above the burning truck. They dragged her out. Bled her in the dirt. Local collateral. Not our concern. Return to the highway, Kessler. Stand down. The line went dead. Kessler lowered the phone. He stared at the screen until it went dark. A corporate fixer terminates a lucrative skip trace contract the moment a rival tactical team enters the picture. Aris had unlimited resources. He hired a tracker to locate Finch, but now demanded the tracker abandon a fresh trail. It did not add up. Men like Aris did not abandon assets. They eliminated competition. Unless Aris already knew about the tactical team. Unless Aris controlled the tactical team. Kessler looked at the tracks leading north. Deep ruts carving the ancient rock. An open invitation to a very specific kind of hell. He could turn the Raptor south. Drive back to civilization. Cash the check for 3 days of desert driving. Drink cold beer in an air-conditioned bar in Austin. Let the corporate scavengers devour their own accountant. He looked at the blood drying in the dust. The deep gouge of the right heel. She planted her feet. She fought. Kessler tossed the dead satellite phone onto the passenger seat. He shifted the Raptor into drive. The tires grabbed the caliche. He steered north, following the deep treads into the canyon shadows, leaving the burning truck and the smell of melted wire behind. The dust plumed behind him, a white banner signaling his intent to the empty sky. Chapter 2. The Ford Raptor chewed through the caliche, the suspension swallowing the ruts, spitting a white plume of pulverized rock across the scrub brush. Harlan Kessler kept the speedometer pinned at 40. Any faster, he risked snapping an axle on a hidden limestone shelf. Any slower, the midday West Texas sun would bake the truck cab into a convection oven. The Panasonic Toughbook, mounted over the center console, displayed a blank topographical map. A red dot blinked near the center. The screen corner flashed a red no-signal icon. 12 hours ago, a cell tower in Presidio caught a momentary ping from Leo Finch's burner phone. Finch was a corporate accountant. Embezzler. Data thief. Men who spent their lives bathed in the glow of dual monitors did not survive long in the Chihuahuan desert. They made mistakes. They sought high ground for cell service. They panicked. Kessler crested a low ridge. The horizon spread out, a bruised purple line of mountains beneath an iron sky. Down in the basin, a column of oily black smoke stained the air. He killed the engine. Silence reclaimed the basin, vast and absolute, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine block. Kessler grabbed the Swarovski binoculars from the passenger seat. He rested his elbows on the steering wheel, framing the lenses against the glare. 2 miles down, a dry creek bed lined with twisted mesquite. A camp. An F-250 pickup sat centered in the clearing. Fire had gutted the cab. The tires had melted into black puddles over the scorched earth. No movement. No bodies visible from his angle. He dropped the binoculars. He racked the slide on the Sig Sauer P226 resting in his lap, checked the magazine, chambered around. Decocked it. Holstered the weapon on his hip. He started the Raptor, shifted into four-wheel low, and eased down the ridge. The scent hit him a quarter-mile out. Acrid, chemical rot. Burning upholstery, vaporized diesel, melted copper wire. It overpowered the ambient smell of sage and hot dust. Kessler stopped the Raptor 50 yards from the tree line. He left the engine running, the air conditioning blasting. He stepped out into the heat. 104 degrees. The air scorched the inside of his lungs. He walked the perimeter. He kept his hands clear of his sides, eyes tracking the shadows beneath the mesquite tangles. He read the violence coded in the dirt. The wind had not yet scoured the ground, leaving the narrative intact. A mess of overlapping tracks marred the creek bank. Two distinct sets of tire treads. One set matched a heavy utility truck, deep aggressive lug patterns, dual rear wheels, wide stance. The other set belonged to a pair of ATVs. Maxxis Bighorns. Off-road racing tires. Finch drove a leased Hyundai Tucson. The burning F-250 belonged to someone else. Kessler circled the ruined truck. A 1999 Ford. The classic 7.3-liter Power-Stroke diesel. Ranchers in this basin treated those specific engines like religious relics, rebuilding them decade after decade. It took serious intent to burn an engine block that solid. The heat radiating from the chassis blistered the skin on his forearms. The paint had vaporized, leaving the steel wearing a coat of gray ash that flaked in the stagnant air. A cooking fire ringed with river stones sat 20 yards away. Someone had kicked an enamelware percolator into the dust. The ground stained the dirt, baked solid like asphalt. Kessler crouched. He pulled a bandana from his back pocket and wiped the sweat stinging his eyes. He studied the footprints. 4 men. Heavy tactical boots. Vibram soles leaving geometric waffle patterns in the fine silt. They moved with purpose. No wasted steps, no scuff marks indicating hesitation or panic. 2 boot sets flanked the campfire in an L-shaped ambush formation. The third secured the creek bed, holding an angle that cut off any retreat into the mesquite. The fourth held the high ground, on a limestone outcrop overlooking the site. Kessler moved up the slope, his boots crunching the brittle limestone. He swept the area near the truck's driver's side door. He found a pen. A Mont Blanc Meisterstick rollerball, the precious resin barrel cracked and oozing black ink into the alkaline dirt. Leo Finch carried a $1,000 pen into a wasteland that cared nothing for signatures. It highlighted the sheer absurdity of the accountant's situation. Finch panicked, hired a local with a reliable power stroke to haul him across the border, and ran out of luck before he ran out of Texas. Kessler climbed to the outcrop. He found 3 brass casings gleaming in a patch of prickly pear. He picked one up. 5.56 NATO. Stamped with a military head stamp. He smelled the burnt cordite. He looked down at the camp from the shooter's vantage point. Overlapping fields of fire. Precision. This was not a cartel hit. Cartel coyotes sprayed lead and made noise. This crew executed a coordinated tactical breach. Kessler moved back down to the center of the camp. He found the drag marks. Twin furrows gouged the hardpan, cutting a straight line from the F-250's passenger door toward the spot where the heavy utility truck had parked. He knelt beside the grooves. Bootprints flanked the furrows. Roper style. Underslung heel, pointed toe, leather sole. The right heel struck deep into the soil. She planted her feet. She anchored her weight against the attacker. The left heel dragged, carving the earth. A woman. A local, wearing working boots, fighting a man wearing tactical gear. Kessler touched the dirt beside the right heel impression. A cluster of dark spots crusted the pale dust. Blood. Oxidized, turning the color of rust. A significant amount. Enough to indicate a blunt force strike to the head or a shallow blade wound. He rubbed the crusted dirt between his thumb and forefinger. Dry. The raid happened before dawn, giving the morning sun ample time to bake the moisture out of the blood and the dew out of the tire tracks. A glint of metal caught his eye near the camp's edge, half buried under a kicked clump of mesquite roots. Kessler dug it out. A titanium thumb drive case. Smashed flat by a tactical boot, the circuit board pulverized. Useless. But Finch carried titanium thumb drives. Finch obsessed over data security. Finch had been here. He hired the owner of the F-250 for transport. The tactical team tracked Finch, hit the camp, executed the extraction. But the woman, the Roper boots. Kessler tracked the drag marks to their termination point. The heavy truck tracks swallowed the boot prints. They loaded her into the back. He followed the departure tracks. The heavy truck and the two ATVs traveled north, carving deep into the arroyo, heading toward the canyon country. Badlands. A labyrinth of limestone-slotted canyons and sheer drop-offs where GPS signals died and satellite maps dissolved into pixelated static. Kessler returned to the Raptor. He opened the rear door and pulled an aluminum Halliburton case from the floorboard. He popped the latches. Inside sat a satellite phone, a trauma kit, topographical paper maps in waterproof sleeves, and a custom-built AR-10 rifle chambered in .308. He locked a 20-round magazine into the rifle well. He slung the weapon behind the passenger seat, accessible from the driver's position. He reached into the center console and retrieved his satellite phone. He dialed the contact number for Apex Resource Holdings Internal Security Division. The line clicked open. A digital hiss. Kessler. The voice lacked texture. Boyd Aris. Ex-military contractor, current corporate problem solver. Aris managed the search for Finch on the corporate end. Aris signed Kessler's contract. "I found Finch's transport," Kessler said. He kept his voice level, revealing nothing. Burned out F-250. Creek bed off County Road 9. And Finch. Gone. A crew hit the camp. Tactical execution. 5.56 rounds. Coordinated overwatch. Silence on the line. The satellite delay added a half-second of empty space, but the pause stretched longer. Aris processed the information. Cartel. Aris asked. "Cartel boys don't wear Vibram soles and maintain fire discipline," Kessler said. "This was a private outfit." "You lost the skip." "I lost the camp. I have the tracks." "Leave it." The instruction snapped through the speaker, hard and absolute. "Finch is a corporate asset, Kessler. We recover assets. We do not chase local disputes into unmapped canyons." Contract terminated. Invoice the firm for your days in the field. A woman was at the camp, Kessler said. He watched a hawk circle the thermal updrafts above the burning truck. They dragged her out. Bled her in the dirt. Local collateral. Not our concern. Return to the highway, Kessler. Stand down. The line went dead. Kessler lowered the phone. He stared at the screen until it went dark. A corporate fixer terminates a lucrative skip trace contract the moment a rival tactical team enters the picture. Aris had unlimited resources. He hired a tracker to locate Finch, but now demanded the tracker abandon a fresh trail. It did not add up. Men like Aris did not abandon assets. They eliminated competition. Unless Aris already knew about the tactical team. Unless Aris controlled the tactical team. Kessler looked at the tracks leading north. Deep ruts carving the ancient rock. An open invitation to a very specific kind of hell. He could turn the Raptor south. Drive back to civilization. Cash the check for 3 days of desert driving. Drink cold beer in an air-conditioned bar in Austin. Let the corporate scavengers devour their own accountant. He looked at the blood drying in the dust. The deep gouge of the right heel. She planted her feet. She fought. Kessler tossed the dead satellite phone onto the passenger seat. He shifted the Raptor into drive. The tires grabbed the caliche. He steered north, following the deep treads into the canyon shadows, leaving the burning truck and the smell of melted wire behind. The dust plumed behind him, a white banner signaling his intent to the empty sky. Chapter 3. 3 massive wind turbines anchored the southern ridge of the Garza property. Their fiberglass blades sliced the dead air, casting long, sweeping shadows across the bruised earth. The rhythmic mechanical groan of the rotors vibrated through the caliche, a deep bass thrum you felt in your molars. Kessler drove the Raptor past a rusted cattle guard. The perimeter fence told a story of systematic decay. Fresh wire spliced the gaps between ancient sun-split cedar posts. Tumbleweeds stacked high against the lower strands, choking the line. The ranch compound sat in a natural depression. A single-story ranch house wrapped in peeling white clapboard anchored the lot. A corrugated steel barn dominated the right flank. A massive solar array blanketed the barn roof, the tempered glass panels coated in a thick layer of West Texas dust. The intersection of cattle country and green energy. Neither seemed to be winning the war against the desert. Kessler parked the Raptor near the barn. He left the engine running. A man wrestled with the exposed engine block of a John Deere 4440 tractor in the center of the dirt yard. He stood on an overturned milk crate, leaning deep into the engine bay, a heavy crescent wrench gripped in his right hand. A lever-action Winchester .30 to 30 leaned against the tractor's massive rear tire, chamber open, a box of shells resting on the rim. Kessler killed the Raptor's engine. He stepped out. The heat wrapped around him, smelling of hot diesel and crushed sage. The man stopped wrenching. He stepped off the milk crate. He wiped his hands on a shop rag stained black with grease. Elias Garza had the lean, stringy build of a man who burned more calories than he consumed. Sun and wind had cured his face into a map of deep ravines. He wore a faded pearl snap shirt, the sleeves rolled past the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and spotted with burn scars. Garza did not reach for the Winchester, but he kept his body angled toward the stock. He evaluated Kessler's boots, the holster on his belt, the neutral set of his shoulders. "Bank sent a new messenger," Garza said. His voice had the grit of crushed limestone. "Croft running out of process servers." "I don't work for Croft," Kessler said. He kept his hands clear of his sides. He walked toward the tractor, stopping 10 feet away. "I trace skips. Bail jumpers. Embezzlers. I track men who don't want to be found." Garza tossed the grease rag onto the tractor hood. "Nobody here fits the description." "I tracked a corporate accountant into the Badlands this morning," Kessler said. "Found his camp down in the dry creek bed off County Road 9. Garza's eyes narrowed. "That's my southern boundary line." "I found a 1999 F-250 torch to the axles," Kessler said. He maintained eye contact, watching the rancher process the information. "I found 5.56 shell casings. And I found blood." Garza went still. The rhythmic whoosh-whoosh of the wind turbines filled the silence. "My daughter drives a 2018 Chevy Colorado," Garza said. He locked his jaw. "She took it out yesterday afternoon to check the fence lines. She carries a radio. She didn't call in. She didn't come back." "I found boot prints," Kessler said. "Ropers." The right heel struck deep. The left heel dragged. A woman fighting a man wearing Vibram tactical soles. Garza reached out and gripped the massive tread of the tractor tire. His knuckles turned bone-white. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin the color of old parchment. He stared at the dirt between Kessler's boots. He did not ask if she survived the fight. Men who lived in this basin understood the math of a blood trail. She fought, Garza whispered. He released the tire. He reached for the Winchester, checked the action, and slid a brass cartridge into the loading gate. The metal clicked, sharp and final. We ride north. You stay here, Kessler said. Garza racked the lever. You found my blood in the dirt. You don't tell me where to stand. A tactical team hit that camp, Kessler said. They set up an L-shaped ambush. They placed a sniper on overwatch. You ride a horse into that canyon with a deer rifle. They put a bullet through your engine block from 500 yards away. You die. Your daughter loses her only leverage. Garza halted. He lowered the rifle barrel toward the dirt. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a cold, pragmatic dread. He understood the tactical disparity. Apex, Garza said. He spit the word into the dust. They couldn't wait 12 hours. They had to break the last piece of the board. Deputy Soto mentioned a foreclosure. Garza turned toward the barn. He gestured with the rifle barrel. Kessler followed him. The barn interior offered 10 degrees of shade and smelled of hydraulic fluid, alfalfa, and old iron. Garza walked past 3 empty vehicle bays. Oil stains mapped the concrete where heavy machinery used to sit. We ran 200 head of Brangus cattle, Garza said. We operated 3 GPS-guided combines. Last year, Apex Resource Holdings bought the note from our local credit union. They restructured the debt. Promised us a lower interest rate if we consolidated the equipment loans with the land deed. A balloon payment, Kessler said. Due tomorrow at 9 in the morning, Garza said. He stopped at a workbench cluttered with socket sets, stripped alternators, and tangled copper wire. We had the cash. Marisol negotiated a lease with a solar farm operator. The panels on the roof generate revenue. We routed the funds to an escrow account. Garza slammed his fist against the workbench. Sockets rattled. 3 weeks ago, our perimeter fences suffered precision cuts. Not wire clippers. Angle grinders. The cattle wandered onto state highway land. Animal control impounded the herd. Fines ate a quarter of the escrow. Garza pointed to the empty bays. Last week, a flatbed rolled in at 3 in the morning. Jammed our security cameras. Loaded up our Caterpillar skid steer and our main combine. Stole our ability to harvest the winter feed. They crippled your cash flow. They starved the escrow account, Garza said. They orchestrated the default. Croft drafted the paperwork. He files the deed transfer in the county clerk's office tomorrow. Marisol knew they staged the theft. She went out to County Road 9 to find the combine tracks. She intended to prove Apex stole the equipment to force the foreclosure. Kessler studied the workbench. He noted a laptop computer, the screen cracked, plugged into a surge protector. Beside the laptop sat a DJI drone controller. The drone itself was missing. She mapped them, Kessler said. He picked up the controller. Dust coated the joysticks. She bought a commercial drone, Garza said. Flew it over the Badlands. The signal died every time she crossed the ridge into the canyon country. Something jammed the radio frequencies. Military-grade signal blockers, Kessler said. He set the controller down. They operate out of the abandoned fracking site. Soto confirmed the location. Croft imported a private army to steal a cattle ranch, Garza said. He stared at the empty bays. It makes no economic sense. The grazing rights don't cover the cost of the mercenaries. They don't want the beef, Kessler said. They don't want the solar panels. Kessler remembered Leo Finch. Finch worked in Apex's geology and acquisitions department. Finch stole a master ledger and fled to the exact coordinate where Apex concentrated their mercenary firepower. Water, Kessler said. Garza shook his head. The Ocotillo aquifer dried up 10 years ago. We pull water from a deep artesian well. Barely sustains the house. Lithium, Kessler said. The piece locked into place. The geometry of the crime clarified. Electric vehicle batteries. The basin sits on ancient brine lakes. Apex surveyed the deep crust. They found a deposit under your topsoil. They need the deed to strip mine the basin. Garza gripped the edge of the workbench. He processed the scale of the theft. His life's work, the blood and sweat poured into the caliche, reduced to a mineral rights obstacle for a Dallas conglomerate. They took my daughter, Garza said. The limestone grit returned to his voice. They took her because she found the tracks. They took her because she became a complication, Kessler said. He turned away from the workbench. He walked out of the barn, back into the punishing sunlight. He checked his watch. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 19 hours until the courthouse opened. Garza followed him out. You track skips. You trace paper. You don't assault fortified positions. I need the accountant, Kessler said. He opened the rear door of the Raptor. He pulled a black tactical vest from a duffel bag. He checked the ceramic strike plates, ensuring the armor seated correctly in the carriers. Finch holds the ledger. Finch possesses the digital keys to Julian Croft's kingdom. The mercenaries hold Finch. Therefore, I visit the mercenaries. He threw the vest onto the passenger seat. He pulled a pair of spare magazines for the AR-10 and slotted them into his belt pouches. They have numbers, Garza said. They have high ground. You drive that truck up the access road, they blow your tires and pin you in the kill zone. I don't drive the truck up the access road. Kessler slammed the rear door. He walked to the driver's side. I drive to the way station on Route 67. The mercenaries need fuel. They need supplies. They rotate men out of the badlands. I find a loose thread. I pull it. Garza stepped forward. He held the Winchester loose in his right hand. I ride with you. Kessler stopped. He looked at the rancher. He saw the busted knuckles, the fatigue carving canyons into his face, the desperation radiating from his posture. A father willing to bleed out in the dust to buy his daughter another sunrise. You stay here, Kessler said. He pointed at the house. Croft wants this land clean. He wants the deed unencumbered. If you disappear into the badlands and take a bullet, Croft wins the probate case. You stay alive. You hold the deed until the clock runs out. Garza tightened his grip on the rifle stock. And Marisol? I bring her back, Kessler said. Or I bring back the men who took her. Kessler climbed into the Raptor. He started the engine. The 8-cylinder block roared, drowning out the rhythmic mechanical groan of the wind turbines overhead. He dropped the transmission into gear. He left Elias Garza standing in the dirt yard, a solitary figure guarding an empty barn, fighting a war against an enemy he could not see. Kessler pointed the truck toward the highway. The heat shimmer warped the horizon, turning the asphalt into a liquid mirror, reflecting the unforgiving sky. Chapter 4. The Raptor idled in the shadow of a derelict billboard. Sun-faded letters advertised a motel that burned to the foundation a decade ago. Kessler left the engine running, keeping the air conditioning fed and the alternator spinning. He grabbed the Panasonic Toughbook from the passenger seat. He popped the heavy magnesium latches. The hinges offered stiff resistance. He booted the machine. The internal cooling fan whined, spitting the scent of heated circuit boards and ozone into the cab. He retrieved a portable satellite uplink module from the center console. The device had a thick rubberized casing and a folding directional antenna. He plugged the umbilical cord into the USB port and braced the antenna against the dashboard glass, angling it toward the southern sky. A green LED blinked on the module casing. Connection established. Kessler opened his encrypted case file directory. He brought up the initial dossier on Leo Finch. He stared at the face on the screen. Finch had a weak chin, wire-rimmed glasses, and the pale, doughy complexion of a man who lived his life under fluorescent office panels. The file listed his title: Senior Auditor, Acquisitions and Holdings, Apex Resource. Boyd Aris hired Kessler 48 hours ago. Aris provided a clean narrative. Finch embezzled $3 million from a corporate expansion fund, bought a burner vehicle, and vanished toward the border. Aris provided the initial cell phone ping. Aris paid a massive retainer to a licensed skip tracer to bring the accountant back. The math failed. You do not send a private military hit squad into the Badlands to recover $3 million. You send a lawyer. You send the FBI. $3 million represented a rounding error for a Dallas conglomerate. Kessler picked up his satellite phone. He dialed a number. 3 rings. A click. The sound of a baseball game playing in the background. "It's Sunday," a voice said. "Turn the game down, Dex." The volume dropped. "You owe me for the weekend interruption. What do you need?" "I need the architectural blueprints for a lie," Kessler said. "Look up Apex Resource Holdings. Dallas address. Run the executive officers. Find a lawyer named Julian Croft." Keyboard keys clattered over the line. Dex worked in a windowless basement in Plano, extracting data from servers that preferred to keep their data buried. "Apex," Dex said. "Registered 3 years ago. Cayman Islands parent company. They buy distressed agricultural debt across West Texas and New Mexico." "Look at their geology filings," Kessler said. More typing. "Nothing filed under Apex." "Check their subsidiaries. Shell companies. Target deep crust mineral surveys. Look for lithium brine." A long pause stretched over the satellite delay. The static hissed, a digital heartbeat filling the silence. "Okay," Dex said. The casual tone vanished from his voice. "I found a subsidiary. Permian Extraction Partners. They filed preliminary survey results with the Texas Railroad Commission 6 months ago. The numbers are massive. They outline a lithium brine aquifer running straight under Ocotillo County. Who owns the surface rights? Various ranchers. A guy named Elias Garza holds the largest tract right over the center of the aquifer. Garza faces foreclosure tomorrow, Kessler said. Croft files the paperwork at 9. Croft built a machine, Dex said. He buys the debt, squeezes the rancher, forecloses the land, and transfers the mineral rights to the subsidiary. He acquires a $1 billion lithium field for the price of a bankrupt cattle ranch. Where does Leo Finch fit in? Finch is an auditor. He maps the money. Dig into Finch's network footprint, Kessler said. Did he transfer cash before he ran? Let me check the FinCEN database. A minute passed. The baseball announcer murmured in the background. No. No wire transfers. No offshore accounts flagged. Finch didn't steal money. What did he take? Data, Dex said. An auditor possesses system-wide access. He downloads the master ledgers. He pulls the internal emails between Croft and the shell companies. He grabs the digital proof of the orchestrated defaults. Finch took the blackmail material. He took the kill switch, Dex said. If those ledgers hit the SEC or the federal prosecutor's desk, Croft goes to federal prison. The holding company faces dissolution. The board of directors loses a billion-dollar asset. Kessler looked through the windshield. The heat shimmer distorted the desolate highway, turning the horizon into a pool of liquid silver. They sent Boyd Aris to recover the ledger, Kessler said. I know that name, Dex said. Aris ran logistics for a private military contractor in Fallujah. He caught a discharge for misappropriating seized assets. He operates in the gray. He cleans up corporate messes. Aris hired me to find Finch, Kessler said. He fed me the location. Then he brought his own tactical team. They hit Finch's camp before dawn. They grabbed Finch. They grabbed a local girl who got in the way. They burned the transport and drove into the badlands. Why hire you at all? Plausible deniability, Kessler said. Aris creates a paper trail. He contracts a licensed skip tracer. If local law enforcement finds Finch's body, Aris produces my contract. He claims he initiated a legal recovery. He blames the murder on a cartel border dispute. A ghost in the ledger, Dex said. Aris uses you as the smokescreen while he secures the data. Aris secured the data, Kessler said. But he hasn't returned to Dallas. He took Finch and the girl to an abandoned fracking site in the canyons. He needs internet access to verify the data integrity, Dex said. He needs Finch to decrypt the drive. Or Aris plans a different exit, Kessler said. The final piece of the puzzle snapped into the grid. The geometry of the violence aligned. Aris knows what the ledger contains, Kessler said. He understands the value. He secures the drive from Finch. He doesn't return it to Croft. He holds it. He blackmails his own boss. He names his price, Kessler said. Croft pays him $10 million out of an untraceable account to bury the files. Aris vanishes into Mexico. And the girl? Collateral damage. Aris disposes of her to ensure silence. Kessler disconnected the call. He tossed the satellite phone onto the passenger seat. He stared at the blank screen of the tough book. The lines of intersection crossed and tangled, pulling three desperate elements into a single geographic point. Julian Croft needed the land deed filed tomorrow morning to secure the lithium. Elias Garza needed his daughter back before the mercenaries executed her in the dust. Boyd Aris needed Finch to unlock the encrypted ledger to complete his extortion play. Kessler closed the laptop. The latches clicked, sealing the armored casing. He unplugged the satellite module and stowed the gear in the rear footwell. He placed both hands on the steering wheel. The leather felt hot against his palms. He considered the odds. A fortified compound. A trained military extraction team. A hostage situation complicated by a massive corporate extortion plot. He shifted the Raptor into gear. He merged back onto Route 67, heading north toward the Badlands. He needed to find the way station. He needed to track the supply line feeding the mercenary camp. He required a door into the fortress. Chapter 5. The asphalt of Route 67 surrendered to crushed caliche. Kessler gripped the leather steering wheel. The Raptor's Fox racing shocks absorbed the transition, the heavy suspension articulating over the jagged ruts, the all-terrain tires biting into the loose rock. Dust plumed behind the tailgate, a thick white curtain severing his connection to the highway. He drove into the Badlands. The terrain folded upward, transforming the flat basin into a maze of vertical limestone ridges and deep shadow-choked ravines. Flash floods carved this geometry a million years ago, scoring deep channels through the bedrock. Now, the dry riverbeds offered the only navigable paths through the labyrinth. Kessler glanced at the Panasonic Toughbook mounted over the console. The topographical map shuddered. The red GPS cursor vanished. A grid of dead pixels consumed the screen. Beside the laptop, the satellite uplink module flashed a yellow warning light, then flatlined to red. The digital world ended at the canyon mouth. The canyon walls, dense with iron and copper deposits, blocked the orbital signals. Boyd Aris chose this specific terrain for its isolation. Drones lost their link here. Cell phones became expensive paperweights. Kessler killed the power to the laptop. He folded the screen down. He relied on the analog world now. He tracked the heavy utility truck and the ATVs by the scars they left in the earth. The deep, aggressive lug patterns of the dual rear wheels crushed the brittle sagebrush and fractured the shale. The ATVs flanked the truck, their knobby tires kicking up berms of loose dirt on the tight turns. The canyon narrowed. The limestone walls climbed 200 feet on either side, trapping the afternoon heat. The temperature gauge on the Raptor's dashboard registered 112 degrees. The air conditioning compressor whined, fighting the thermal load. Kessler stopped the truck. The tracks entered a choke point, a gap between two sheer rock faces barely wide enough for a commercial vehicle. Beyond the gap, the canyon floor rose into a steep, boulder-strewn incline. A tactical commander looks at a choke point and sees a kill zone. Aris commanded a tactical team. Kessler shifted the transmission into reverse. He backed the Raptor out of the main channel, steering into a narrow side ravine. He parked the truck deep in the shadow of a massive sandstone overhang. He killed the engine. The silence rushed in, vast and oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the cooling exhaust manifold. He stepped out of the cab. The heat struck him like a physical blow. It sucked the moisture from his eyes and seared the lining of his throat. He walked to the rear door and opened it. He pulled his tactical vest from the seat and strapped it on, securing the ceramic strike plates over his chest and back. He slotted two spare 20-round magazines into the chest pouches. He retrieved the custom AR-10. He checked the action, pulling the charging handle back. The machined steel bolt glided in its track. He inspected the brass casing of the 168-grain hollow point, released the handle, and chambered the round. He engaged the safety. Kessler reached into his trauma kit and pulled out a folded square of mylar. An emergency space blanket. He shoved the foil packet into his cargo pocket. He clipped a canteen to his belt. He left the truck and walked back to the main canyon. He avoided the center of the dry riverbed, hugging the eastern wall, keeping his silhouette absorbed in the shadows of the jagged rock outcroppings. His boots found solid stone, avoiding the loose gravel that would announce his approach. He stopped 50 yards from the choke point. He unslung the rifle and settled into a crouch behind a slab of fallen limestone. He pulled the Swarovski binoculars from a belt pouch. He glassed the western ridge. He started at the skyline, scanning the serrated edge of the cliff. Nothing. He lowered his field of view, dissecting the rock face section by section. He looked for straight lines and perfect circles. Nature abhors precise geometry. He found a perfect circle halfway up the ridge. A lens. Kessler dialed the focus wheel on the binoculars. The blur sharpened into a mechanical assembly. A FLIR thermal imaging camera sat bolted to a tripod, tucked into a shallow alcove in the cliff face. The motorized gimbal whirred, pivoting the camera lens in a slow, continuous sweep across the canyon floor. It covered the choke point. It covered the approach. Beside the camera, a shape detached itself from the background rock. A spotter. He wore a digital desert camouflage uniform and a mesh sniper veil over his head and shoulders. The veil broke up his outline, turning him into a pile of loose shale. He lay in the prone position, his chest flush against a foam mat. He held a customized Statute 25 precision rifle, the barrel wrapped in burlap, the muzzle fitted with a cylindrical sound suppressor. The spotter did not look through his rifle optic. He watched a ruggedized tablet screen resting in the dirt beside his elbow. The thermal camera fed the video link directly to the screen. Kessler lowered the binoculars. He calculated the variables. He carried a rifle. He had the angle. He could place a bullet through the spotter's chest cavity from this distance. But a dead spotter initiates a cascade failure. The spotter carried a radio. ARIS required regular check-ins. A missed radio call triggers an alarm at the main compound. ARIS executes the hostages, packs the encrypted ledger, and vanishes before Kessler covers the remaining miles. Kessler needed to bypass the overwatch. He needed to become a ghost in the machine. He studied the environment. The sun battered the western ridge, baking the limestone. Thermal cameras detect temperature differentials. A human body registers at 98 degrees. Against a cold background, a man glows bright white on a FLIR screen. But the ambient temperature of the canyon rocks pushed past 110 degrees. The environment burned hotter than his blood. Kessler pulled the mylar blanket from his cargo pocket. He unfolded the foil sheet. The material crinkled, thin and fragile. Mylar reflects infrared radiation. It baffles thermal sensors, trapping body heat inside the foil and presenting a blank, reflective surface to the outside world. He draped the blanket over his head and shoulders, letting it fall past his knees. He gripped the edges from the inside, holding the foil tight against his chest. He stepped out from behind the limestone slab. The heat inside the mylar cocoon spiked instantly. His sweat offered no cooling effect, trapped against his skin in the stagnant foil-wrapped air. The temperature under the blanket crested 120 degrees. His heart hammered against his ribs. His vision narrowed. He moved forward. He kept his boots low, placing each heel with deliberate care, rolling his weight onto the ball of his foot. He monitored the motorized whir of the FLIR camera above him. The lens pivoted toward his position. Kessler froze. He pressed his back against the canyon wall. He angled the mylar blanket to reflect the sheer rock face opposite him. Up on the ridge, the spotter spit a stream of black tobacco juice into the dirt. He tapped the tablet screen. He shifted his weight on the foam mat, adjusting his rifle sling. He did not sound an alarm. He did not level the Statute 25. The camera lens glided past Kessler, continuing its arc toward the southern approach. The mylar worked. The camera read the ambient heat of the canyon walls reflecting off the foil. To the spotter staring at the tablet, Kessler registered as another slab of sun-baked limestone. Kessler resumed his advance. He crossed the kill zone. The choke point narrowed to 30 feet. He navigated a cluster of massive boulders choking the riverbed, slipping through the tight fissures, dragging the mylar blanket over the rough stone. The foil snagged on a jagged spur. A micro tear ripped the material. He gathered the slack in his fist, sealing the breach, holding his body heat inside the trap. His lungs burned. The air inside the blanket tasted metallic and stale. Black spots swarmed the edges of his vision. Heat exhaustion initiated its subtle shutdown sequence in his brain. He forced his legs to move. 10 yards. 20 yards. He cleared the choke point. The canyon widened, curving sharp to the east, cutting off the spotter's line of sight. Kessler threw the mylar blanket off his shoulders. The 112-degree canyon air hit him like a blast of Arctic wind. He collapsed against the rock wall, dropping to one knee. He dragged oxygen into his lungs in ragged gasps. Sweat poured off his face, stinging his eyes, saturating his tactical vest. He unclipped his canteen. He poured a measure of warm water over his head, letting it run down his neck. He drank a controlled mouthful, resisting the urge to drain the plastic bottle. He needed the water to regulate his core temperature for the miles ahead. He shoved the torn mylar blanket back into his cargo pocket. He stood up. He unslung the AR-10 and checked the chamber. He looked down at the dirt. The heavy truck tracks and the ATV treads resumed their path, gouging the soft earth, leading deeper into the labyrinth. They left the dry riverbed and climbed an old switchback access road carved into the canyon wall. A road built for heavy equipment. A road leading to an abandoned fracking site. Boyd Aris fortified the perimeter. He deployed military-grade optics. He committed his resources to securing the high ground. Kessler gripped his rifle. Aris locked the front door. Kessler intended to find the windows. He followed the tracks up the incline, his boots grinding the loose caliche, pressing deeper into the hostile architecture of the Badlands. Chapter 6. The switchback access road crested a limestone ridge and dumped Kessler onto a plateau of baked hardpan. The terrain flattened. The ancient riverbed gave way to a graded supply route, engineered decades ago to handle the weight of water tankers and drilling rigs. Kessler followed the grade. 2 miles down the plateau, the road intersected a crumbling 2-lane blacktop. A structure occupied the junction. A flat-roofed cinder-block building, anchored to a cracked concrete pad. A rusted canopy shaded 2 defunct gas pumps. The pumps featured analog rolling numbers and faded Sinclair dinosaur decals peeling in the heat. A wooden sign hung from a single rusted chain over the front door. The painted letters spelling ice and beer had the faded quality of a forgotten memory. Kessler remained in the shadow of the ridge. He raised the Swarovski binoculars. 2 Yamaha Grizzly ATVs sat parked beneath the canopy, utilizing the scant shade. A thick coat of white caliche dust muted their olive-drab plastic fairings. Kessler dialed the focus wheel, examining the rubber. Maxxis Bighorn radials. The aggressive, asymmetric tread blocks matched the exact impressions left in the dry creek bed beside Leo Finch's burning truck. Boyd Aris maintained a perimeter. These men guarded the back door to the Badlands, screening the supply line, watching the blacktop for local sheriff cruisers or wandering ranchers. Kessler lowered the binoculars. He calculated the distance. 500 yards of open ground separated the ridge from the cinder block building. A direct approach invited a rifle bullet. He retreated down the access road, retrieved the Raptor from the ravine, and drove a wide 5-mile loop through the scrub brush. He navigated dry washes and eroded arroyos, keeping his vehicle below the skyline. He merged onto the 2-lane blacktop a mile south of the junction. He drove the Raptor toward the way station. He presented the profile of a lost traveler in a dusty truck. He pulled onto the concrete pad and parked next to the gas pumps, positioning the Raptor's engine block between his door and the building's front window. He left the engine running. Kessler stepped out. The heat radiating from the asphalt bit through the soles of his boots. The wind kicked up a vortex of sand, rattling an empty tin can across the concrete. The corrugated tin roof of the building expanded in the sun, popping with sharp metallic cracks. He approached the door. A bell chimed a dull, brass note when he pushed the glass inward. The interior hit him with a wall of stagnant air smelling of pickled eggs, old sweat, and stale tobacco. A commercial beverage cooler hummed against the back wall, its compressor vibrating against a loose metal grate. Dust motes drifted through the shafts of light piercing the grimy front windows. An old man sat on a stool behind a scarred wooden counter. He wore a soiled apron over a denim shirt. He polished a heavy glass ashtray with a rag. He kept his eyes locked on his hands. Fear radiated from his rigid posture, the tight set of his jaw, the white knuckles gripping the rag. Two men occupied a booth in the corner. They stripped their tactical gear down to accommodate the heat. Tan cargo pants, moisture-wicking olive drab t-shirts tight across muscular shoulders. The larger man had a thick bull neck and a shaved head scarred by old lacerations. He rested his forearms on the formica table. The second man lacked bulk, but radiated a coiled kinetic tension. He had a lean, angular face and pale eyes that processed the room with mechanical efficiency. Both men wore drop-leg tactical holsters, polymer-framed striker-fired pistols. Kessler walked to the beverage cooler. He opened the glass door. A blast of synthetic cold washed over his face. He selected a bottle of Topo Chico. He felt the weight of the glass, the condensation turning the surface slick. He walked to the counter. He set the bottle down. He retrieved a $5 bill from his money clip and placed it beside the glass. The old man did not touch the money. He kept rubbing the rag in a tight circle inside the ashtray. "Register is closed," the lean man in the booth said. Kessler turned his head. He leaned his hip against the counter, keeping his right hand free, his body bladed toward the threat. "I have exact change," Kessler said. "The establishment ceased operations an hour ago," the lean man said. He did not raise his voice. He stated a fact. He slid his hands off the table, resting them on his thighs inches from his holster. "Sign outside says ice and beer," Kessler said. Door was unlocked. The social contract implies a transaction. The large man snorted. He shifted his weight, the vinyl booth groaning under the mass. "You read a lot of books, buddy. Get back in your truck. Turn around. Drive south." "I took a wrong turn," Kessler said. "Looking for a fracking site. Apex Resource Holdings. Supposed to be up this road." The air in the room stalled. The hum of the cooler compressor filled the silence. The lean man tilted his head. He catalogued Kessler's appearance. The dust on the boots. The tactical vest, visible beneath the unbuttoned overshirt. The confident, relaxed posture of a man who understood the geometry of a gunfight. "Nobody runs a fracking site out here," the lean man said. "Wells dried up in '98. You received bad information." "A guy named Leo Finch gave me the coordinates," Kessler said. The large man planted his palms on the table and pushed himself out of the booth. He stood 6'4", a wall of muscle and bone. He unclasped the retention strap on his drop-leg holster. "You need to leave the bottle and walk out the door," the large man said. He closed the distance, stopping 5 feet from Kessler. "You walk out, get in the Ford, and vanish. You say another word, I put you in the dirt." "You burned Finch's transport this morning," Kessler said. He maintained eye contact with the large man, tracking the lean man in his peripheral vision. "You made a mess. Left shell casings. Left boot prints. Left a lot of blood." The large man lunged. He dropped his right hand to his pistol grip. Kessler moved. He bypassed the firearm. He snatched the Topo Chico bottle from the counter. He gripped the neck and drove the heavy glass base into the large man's face. The impact produced a wet, hollow crunch. The glass held intact. Bone shattered. The large man staggered backward, blood exploding from his ruined nose, blinding him. His hands flew to his face, abandoning the pistol. The lean man cleared leather. His pistol cleared the holster lip, the muzzle sweeping upward toward Kessler's center mass. Kessler threw the glass bottle. The projectile caught the lean man in the throat. The man choked, a ragged gasp of interrupted air, his chin jerking upward. The pistol discharged. The 9mm round shattered the neon beer sign hanging in the window, showering the floor with sparks and powdered glass. Kessler closed the gap. He grabbed the lean man's gun hand, twisting the wrist outward, forcing the muzzle toward the ceiling. He drove his knee into the man's groin. The mercenary folded inward. Kessler stepped past his guard, wrapped an arm around the man's neck, and applied a vascular chokehold. He clamped down, compressing the carotid arteries against the cervical spine. The lean man thrashed. He dropped the pistol. His hands clawed at Kessler's forearm, tearing strips of skin. Kessler anchored his stance, locking his hips, sinking his weight backward. 10 seconds. The thrashing weakened. The man's eyes rolled back. His body went limp, a dead weight sagging against Kessler's chest. Kessler lowered the unconscious man to the cracked linoleum. A shadow moved on Kessler's right. The large man recovered. Blood painted his chin and chest a slick, bright crimson. He bypassed his sidearm, pulling a fixed-blade combat knife from a chest sheath. He roared, driving the blade in a low upward arc toward Kessler's abdomen. Kessler pivoted, off his front foot. The blade sliced the fabric of his shirt, sparking against the ceramic strike plate of his concealed vest. Kessler trapped the knife arm against his ribs with his left elbow. He drove the heel of his right hand into the hinge of the large man's jaw. The joint popped. The large man's knees buckled. Kessler followed with a devastating elbow strike to the temple. The mercenary hit the floor like a dropped sandbag and did not move. The violent kinetic energy drained from the room. Kessler stood over the bodies. He monitored his breathing, slowing his heart rate, pushing the adrenaline spike back into the vault. Behind the counter, the old man remained frozen on the stool. He held the rags suspended in the air. "Lock your door," Kessler said. Kessler knelt beside the lean man. He patted down the cargo pockets. He found a spare pistol magazine, a folding knife, and a black ruggedized smartphone encased in thick rubber armor. He pressed the power button. The screen illuminated, requesting a biometric thumbprint. Kessler grabbed the lean man's right hand. He pressed the unconscious thumb against the glass sensor. The screen unlocked. A tactical mapping application dominated the display. Kessler studied the screen. A blue dot indicated their current location at the way station. A red line traced a path north, deeper into the canyons, terminating at a cluster of icons labeled Site Alpha. He tapped the icons. A menu expanded. It listed a localized topographic map, guard rotation schedules, and a list of active radio frequencies. Boyd Aris ran a military operation. He digitized his logistics. Kessler memorized the coordinates and the visual layout of the terrain. The abandoned fracking site sat in a deep caldera, surrounded by sheer cliffs. One road in, one road out. Perfect isolation. Perfect defense. He opened the phone's messaging application. He found a thread of encrypted texts sent to a contact labeled Command. Message from Command, 10:42 a.m. Local target secured. Package requires decryption. Hold perimeter at way station. No traffic passes. Await extraction window at 1800 hours. Kessler checked his watch. 1800 hours. 6 p.m. 3 hours from now. Boyd Aris planned to break camp. He held Marisol Garza. He held Leo Finch. He held the encrypted drive. Once Finch surrendered the password, Aris had zero incentive to keep the hostages breathing. At 6 o'clock, the mercenaries would execute the liabilities, load the vehicles, and vanish. Kessler pocketed the ruggedized phone. He stood up. He walked to the counter. He took the $5 bill and placed it in the old man's trembling hand. He took a fresh bottle of Topo Chico from the cooler. He walked out the door, stepping over the shattered glass of the neon sign. The afternoon heat swallowed him. He walked to the Raptor, cracked the bottle against the steel bumper to remove the cap, and drank the mineral water in 3 long swallows. He tossed the empty bottle into the truck bed. He had the map. He had the timetable. He climbed into the cab, shifted the truck into gear, and pointed the grill north, accelerating past the parked ATVs and the rusted gas pumps, driving deep into the jagged heart of the Badlands. Chapter 7. Kessler drove the Raptor into a deep wash 2 miles south of the target coordinates. He killed the engine. He pulled a drab canvas tarp from the truck bed and draped it over the cab, breaking the vehicle's geometric outline and killing the windshield glare. He stripped the tactical vest from his torso. The ceramic plates added unnecessary weight for a vertical climb. He opted for a chest rig, sliding 4 spare rifle magazines into the canvas pouches. He secured his P226 pistol in a Kydex hip holster. He slung the AR-10 across his back. He climbed the canyon wall. The limestone radiated heat, baking his palms through his tactical gloves. The rock face featured deep fissures and jagged shelves. He found handholds, tested the stone, and pulled his body weight upward. Sweat saturated his shirt, stinging his eyes, pooling at the small of his back. The ascent shredded the fabric of his trousers over his knees. He reached the summit ridge. He dropped onto his stomach. He crawled the last 10 yards, keeping his silhouette below the jagged skyline. He brought the Swarovski binoculars to his eyes. He dialed the focus wheel. The caldera opened below him, a massive crater punched into the Permian bedrock. Decades of industrial abuse scarred the earth. An abandoned hydraulic fracturing site occupied the center of the depression. A 10-foot chain-link fence, topped with coiled concertina wire, established a perimeter around a 2-acre dirt lot. 2 massive Caterpillar diesel generators anchored the northern fence line. They sat in heavy steel cages, their engines throbbing, vibrating the bedrock. Plumes of black diesel exhaust distorted the air above their stacks. Boyd Aris built a fortress in the wasteland. Kessler mapped the interior grid. 3 rusted cylindrical holding tanks loomed near the center, cast iron pipes spider-webbing from their bases into the cracked caliche. Beside the tanks, a cluster of retrofitted shipping containers formed a makeshift barracks. Corrugated steel walls. Heavy padlock hasps. Aluminum stanchions rose from the container roofs, supporting arrayed halogen floodlights aimed at the perimeter. A temporary corral occupied the southern corner. Welded steel cattle panels confined 36 head of Brangus cattle. The animals huddled together, seeking shade beneath a makeshift canvas awning. Beside the corral sat Elias Garza's stolen livelihood. Kessler recognized the equipment from the empty bays at the Garza ranch. A Caterpillar skid steer and a massive John Deere combine harvester. A thick coat of white dust muted the factory green paint. Aris impounded the machinery to force the Garza foreclosure, parking the assets inside his perimeter to ensure Elias had zero means of financial recovery. Kessler studied the human element. 4 men walked the fence line. They moved with professional discipline. They wore modular plate carriers over moisture-wicking shirts. They carried M4 carbines across their chests on single-point slings. They checked their corners. They maintained overlapping fields of view, ensuring no dead space existed between patrols. Closed-circuit cameras mounted on the generator housings and the container roofs covered the blind spots. The motorized lenses swept the fence line in continuous mechanical arcs. Thick bundles of black coaxial cable snaked from the camera mounts to a central command container. Aris controlled the optics. He controlled the choke points. He owned the high ground. Kessler lowered the binoculars. He pressed his face against the hot limestone. He ran the extraction geometry in his head. He needed to locate Marisol Garza and Leo Finch. The shipping containers offered the only secure holding cells. He needed to breach the concertina wire. He needed to cross 50 yards of open dirt. He needed to defeat heavy steel padlocks. He needed to march 2 exhausted hostages back across the compound, bypass 4 trained shooters, outrun the motorized camera sweeps, and scale a vertical canyon wall. The math failed. A silent breach initiates a countdown. Cut wire triggers a tension alarm. A suppressed gunshot alerts the guard rotation. The moment he crosses the perimeter, the cameras register his thermal signature. Aris monitors the feeds. Aris holds the high ground. When the perimeter falls, Aris executes the liabilities and burns the evidence. Stealth offered zero probability of success. Kessler pulled the ruggedized smartphone from his cargo pocket. He unlocked the screen using the dead mercenary's thumbprint. He accessed the localized topographic map. One graded access road led into the caldera. The road funneled through a narrow gap in the rock face, terminating at a rolling steel gate. Two guards occupied a sandbagged fighting position adjacent to the gate. Kessler tapped the phone screen against his chin. He watched a patrolman pivot at the southern fence line, sweeping his carbine barrel across the arroyo. He could not break in. The architecture forbade it. He needed an invitation. He needed to walk through the front door. Kessler unslung the AR-10. He pushed the takedown pins through the receiver block. He separated the upper receiver from the lower. He wrapped the precision rifle components in the torn mylar blanket from his cargo pocket. He shoved the bundle into the space beneath a massive limestone boulder, burying the weapon under a pile of loose shale. He removed the chest rig. He stripped the spare magazines from the pouches. He buried the tactical gear beside the rifle. He checked the Sig Sauer P226 on his hip. He ejected the magazine, caught the chambered round, and locked the slide back. He dropped the empty firearm into the dirt. He stood up. He brushed the pale dust from his shirt. He rolled his shoulders, relieving the tension in his neck. He left his cover. He walked down the slope, his boots crushing the brittle sagebrush, descending toward the graded access road and the fortified steel gate. Chapter 8. Kessler descended the graded access road. The crushed caliche ground beneath his boot soles, announcing his approach. He kept his hands clear of his waist. He presented his palms to the canyon walls. The road funneled into a gap in the limestone. A rolling gate constructed of welded Schedule 40 steel pipe blocked the passage. The gate rode on heavy iron casters seated in a concrete track. A sandbagged fighting position anchored the right side of the gate. Two guards occupied the pit. They wore modular plate carriers and wrap-around ballistic sunglasses. They tracked Kessler's approach. The guard on the right shouldered his M4 carbine. The mechanical snap of the thumb safety disengaging echoed off the rock walls. "Stop," the guard said. Kessler stopped. 10 yards separated him from the muzzle. He kept his hands raised, fingers spread. "Turn around. Lace your fingers behind your head." "I possess an empty holster," Kessler said. "I dropped the magazine. I cleared the chamber. I walked down this road to have a conversation." "Turn around." The guard stepped out from behind the sandbags. He kept the EOTech holographic sight fixed on Kessler's chest. "Next warning comes out of the barrel." Kessler turned. He interlaced his fingers behind his head. The second guard approached. Heavy tactical boots crunched the gravel. Hard plastic pressed into Kessler's spine as the guard drove the barrel of a carbine between his shoulder blades. Hands patted down his sides, checking his cargo pockets, tracing his belt line. The guard yanked the empty Sig Sauer P226 from the Kydex holster. He tossed the weapon into the dirt. "He dumped his sidearm," the second guard said. "He carries a death wish," the first guard said. "Kneel." Kessler dropped to his knees. The caliche bit into his kneecaps through the torn fabric of his trousers. The guard grabbed Kessler's wrists, wrenched them behind his back, and applied a heavy-duty plastic flex cuff. The nylon teeth ratcheted tight, biting into the skin. "Get him up," the first guard said. They hauled Kessler to his feet. One guard grabbed his bicep. The other rolled the heavy steel gate back on its casters. The iron wheels shrieked against the concrete track. They marched him into the caldera. The industrial wasteland assaulted his senses. Two massive Caterpillar diesel generators throbbed, sending tremors through the bedrock. The exhaust stacks pumped black soot into the stagnant air. The smell of vaporized diesel mixed with the raw ammonia stench of terrified cattle huddled in the corner pens. Dust coated every surface. The rusted holding tanks. The repurposed shipping containers. The stolen John Deere combine parked in the dirt lot. The compound felt like a machine engineered to convert money into noise and heat. "Command," the first guard said, keying a shoulder-mounted radio mic. "We caught a stray at the front door. Unarmed. Requesting disposition." Static hissed from the speaker. "Bring him to the center box." The guards steered Kessler toward the cluster of shipping containers. Heavy modifications altered the steel boxes. Plasma cutters had excised sections of the corrugated walls, replacing them with reinforced steel doors and industrial exhaust fans. Thick bundles of black coaxial cable snaked across the dirt, connecting the container roofs to the generator housings. They stopped in front of the central container. A guard punched a 4-digit code into an electronic keypad mounted on the steel frame. A magnetic lock disengaged with a heavy clack. The door swung open. A blast of synthetic, refrigerated air rushed out. The guards shoved Kessler inside. The interior resembled the nerve center of a drone strike operation. Racks of server blades hummed against the back wall, their indicator lights blinking green and amber. 4 flat-screen monitors hung from a unistrut frame, displaying the thermal feeds from the perimeter cameras. A massive industrial air conditioning unit, bolted to the ceiling, dripped condensation into a plastic bucket. Boyd Aris sat at a folding tactical desk in the center of the room. Aris did not fit the environment. He wore a crisp dark polo shirt and pressed khaki trousers. No body armor. No sidearm. He had the groomed, sanitized appearance of a Silicon Valley executive. Only the eyes betrayed his history. Pale, depthless, and unblinking. The eyes of a man who evaluated human life on a balance sheet. Aris studied the thermal monitors. He watched Kessler's heat signature fade from the exterior feed. He swiveled his chair. He looked at Kessler. He looked at the flex cuffs binding Kessler's wrists. "I terminated your contract," Aris said. "You poached my skip," Kessler said. "You hired me to locate Leo Finch. I tracked him. I found him. You sent a hit team to clear the board before I could collect my fee." Aris leaned back in his chair. He steepled his fingers. He evaluated Kessler's posture. Kessler offered no physical resistance. He stood relaxed, breathing steady, displaying the indignation of a short-changed contractor. "You walked into a fortified mercenary encampment," Aris said. "You surrendered your weapon. You wear flex cuffs. You initiated this sequence of events over a collection dispute. You owe me $75,000. I owe you nothing." Aris picked up a titanium pen from his desk. He turned it between his fingers. Finch represents corporate property. Apex Resource Holdings recovers its own property. Apex hired a skip tracer to create a paper trail, Kessler said. You wanted the local sheriff to see my contract. You needed Riggins to write off Finch's disappearance as a bounty hunt gone wrong. Plausible deniability. It protects your extraction team. Aris stopped turning the pen. A fraction of a millimeter shift in his jaw revealed his surprise. You comprehend the mechanics, Aris said. I comprehend the math, Kessler said. Finch embezzled $3 million. You spent $500,000 outfitting this command post. You deploy military-grade optics. You maintain a dozen shooters on payroll. The math fails. Finch possesses something worth 10 times your overhead. I want my cut. Aris set the pen down. He rested his hands on the desk. He had a predator's stillness. He did not buy the narrative. He tested the edges of the lie, looking for the seam. I lost radio contact with my perimeter guards on Route 67 an hour ago, Aris said. I saw a gas station, Kessler said. Sign said closed. You drove past my security checkpoint. I drove past a ruin. Aris stood up. He walked around the desk. He stood 2 feet from Kessler, invading his physical space. Aris smelled of expensive cologne and ozone from the server racks. You exhibit a fatal surplus of confidence, Mr. Kessler. You construct a narrative about a skipped bounty. You demand payment. You dump your ammunition at my gate to demonstrate your willingness to negotiate. Aris shook his head. Men do not walk into the guns for money. They walk into the guns for a cause. I run a business. You run a rescue mission. Aris turned his back. He paced toward the server racks. You traced the blood in the dirt at the dry creek bed. You identified the collateral damage. You discovered the rancher's daughter. Kessler kept his face a blank mask. He offered zero confirmation. Julian Croft views this basin as a balance sheet, Aris said. He traced a finger along the humming server chassis. Croft drafts foreclosures. He initiates hostile takeovers. He ordered me to secure the accountant and recover the stolen ledger. He commanded me to eliminate the rancher's daughter to ensure zero witnesses. But you hold her, Kessler said. You hold Finch. Aris turned around. A cold, transactional smile touched the corners of his mouth. Croft lacks vision, Aris said. Croft intends to submit the ledger to his board of directors and claim his year-end bonus. He undervalues the asset. Finch holds the keys to $1 billion lithium deposit. Finch holds the digital proof of Croft's illegal land grabs. The market value of that data exceeds any corporate bonus. You plan to extort your own boss. I plan to retire, Aris said. I require Finch to decrypt the master drive. Finch demonstrates a stubborn resistance to pain. He delays the process. The girl provides leverage. I utilize her to motivate Finch. And when he cracks the drive, I transmit a sample of the data to Croft, Aris said. I name my price. Croft wires the funds to an offshore account. I load the vehicles. We vanish across the border. Croft explains the empty compound to the local authorities. You leave bodies behind. I leave loose ends tied. Aris walked back to his desk. He sat down. He dismissed Kessler from his immediate concern. Aris pressed a button on a desktop intercom. Dutch, Aris said. The door to the command container opened. The blast of hot, diesel-scented air invaded the refrigerated room. A man filled the doorframe. Kessler recognized the architecture of violence. The man stood 6'2", packed with dense practical muscle. He wore a faded tactical shirt with the sleeves cut off, revealing arms mapped with erratic tattoos and puckered bullet scars. He carried a customized 1911 pistol in a chest rig. His face resembled a block of granite struck repeatedly with a heavy hammer. A flattened nose. Thick scar tissue ridges over his eyes. Boss, Dutch said. His voice rumbled, a deep resonant growl originating deep in his chest. Search him, Aris said. Empty his pockets. Put him in box 4. Dutch crossed the room. He grabbed Kessler by the shoulder harness of his chest rig. The mercenary had the grip strength of an industrial vice. Dutch patted Kessler down. He extracted the keys to the Raptor, the ruggedized smartphone lifted from the way station, and the steel money clip. He tossed the items onto Aris's desk. Aris looked at the ruggedized smartphone. He recognized the heavy rubber armor. Aris looked up at Kessler. The cold smile vanished. "My perimeter guards," Aris said. "They failed the social contract," Kessler said. Aris picked up the smartphone. He turned it over in his hand. He processed the variable Kessler introduced into his timeline. Kessler bypassed a two-man armed checkpoint. Kessler walked into the command center under a false flag. Kessler represented an intolerable risk. "Box 4, Aris said. "Secure the padlock. Check the hinges. When Finch gives me the password, you execute this one first." Dutch shoved Kessler toward the door. They exited the air-conditioned container. The caldera heat slammed into Kessler. Dutch marched him across the dirt lot, weaving past the throbbing diesel generators and the massive holding tanks. The dust choked Kessler's lungs. They approached a rusted shipping container set apart from the main cluster. Heavy steel plates reinforced the original corrugated walls. A massive master lock secured the hasp. Dutch produced a key ring. He disengaged the padlock. He slid the heavy steel locking bar to the left. Dutch grabbed the iron handle and pulled the door open. Darkness filled the interior cavity. The smell of sweat, fear, and human waste rolled out of the gap. Dutch grabbed Kessler by the collar and hurled him forward. Kessler stumbled into the pitch-black container. He lost his footing, his knees slamming into the ribbed steel floor. The impact sent a shockwave up his shins. Unable to break his fall with his flex-cuffed hands, his shoulder absorbed the rest of the momentum. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind him. The metallic boom echoed inside the iron box. The padlock snapped closed, a sharp, definitive click. Total darkness consumed the space. The ambient heat inside the unventilated container began to rise, baking the trapped air. Kessler lay on the steel floor. He regulated his breathing. He mapped the pain in his shoulder. He tested the tension of the plastic flex cuffs binding his wrists. He was inside the fortress. He occupied the center of the board. Now, he needed to break the box. Chapter 9. Darkness had physical weight. The Corten steel walls absorbed the Permian sun, acting as a thermal battery, transferring the heat into the unventilated cavity. The trapped air tasted of oxidized paint, ancient diesel spills, and dust. Kessler lay on the ribbed metal floor. He mapped the pain. His right shoulder throbbed from the impact. A bruised rotator cuff. Functional, but compromised. His knees burned where the caliche tore the skin. The immediate threat resided at his wrists. Dutch used a heavy-duty, double-loop nylon flex cuff. The plastic teeth bit deep into Kessler's forearms, restricting the brachial arteries. A man loses manual dexterity after 30 minutes of restricted blood flow. After an hour, nerve damage begins. Kessler kneaded his hands in front of his body. He rolled onto his side. He drew his knees to his chest, curling his spine into a tight arc. He pushed his bound hands down past his hips. The angle strained his shoulder joints. Cartilage popped. Muscle fibers burned. He hooked the toe of his right boot inside the loop of his arms. He dragged his heel through the gap, followed by his left boot. He uncoiled his spine. His hands rested in front of his chest. He had a visual field of absolute black. He relied on touch. He reached down to his left boot. He unlaced the tactical knot. He pulled the tongue forward and reached beneath the foam insole. His fingers located a stiff, braided wire. A Kevlar friction saw. He extracted the cord. He formed a loop at one end and slipped it over his left boot toe. He threaded the free end of the Kevlar up through the tight gap between his wrists, sliding the rough material between the thick plastic of the flex cuff and his bruised skin. He formed a second loop and secured it over his right boot toe. He lay flat on his back. He bent his knees. He initiated the cut. He pumped his legs, cycling his knees in a pedaling motion. The Kevlar cord sawed back and forth across the thick nylon restraint. Friction generated immediate heat. The abrasive Kevlar fiber chewed a groove into the plastic. The synthetic material softened. The friction transferred heat to Kessler's skin, blistering his wrists. He ignored the burn. He maintained the rhythm, driving his heels, keeping the cord taut. The plastic reached its melting point. The nylon sheared. The flex cuffs snapped apart. Kessler dropped his legs. He pulled the plastic bands from his wrists and tossed them onto the steel floor. He rubbed his forearms, forcing blood back into his hands. Prickles of agonizing fire shot through his fingertips as circulation returned. He stood up. He navigated the black void, shuffling his boots across the ribbed floor. He reached a corrugated steel wall. He placed his palms flat against the metal. The steel burned his skin. He traced the rivets and welded seams. He mapped the dimensions of the box. 8 feet wide, 20 feet long. A standard intermodal shipping container. He reached the eastern wall. He pressed his ear against the corrugated steel. The exterior world bled through the metal. He felt the low-frequency vibration of the Caterpillar generators. He heard the muffled crunch of tactical boots on caliche gravel. A perimeter guard walking the line. Kessler felt a different vibration. A rhythmic, localized impact against the steel plate. Tap, tap. A pause. Tap, tap, tap. Someone occupied the adjacent container. Someone utilized a hard object to strike the shared wall. Kessler dropped to his knees. He found a loose bolt on the floor. He gripped the heavy iron hardware. He struck the wall. Tap, tap. He waited. The return signal hit the steel immediately. Tap. Kessler tracked the origin point. The sound emanated from the bottom corner, near the floor weld. Corten steel containers feature forklift pockets built into the base chassis. Rust often exploits the welds, connecting the pockets to the floor plates. He crawled to the corner. He ran his fingers along the baseboard seam. He found jagged, oxidized metal. A rust hole, roughly the size of a silver dollar, breached the shared wall. He pressed his mouth to the hole. "You possess a name?" Kessler asked. He kept his voice pitched low, a rough whisper designed to die before it reached the exterior doors. A response drifted through the rust gap. The voice lacked inflection. It carried the dry, mechanical rasp of a throat deprived of water. "Marisol." "Elias sent me," Kessler said. Silence occupied the gap for 5 seconds. "My father possesses 0 resources," Marisol said. "He holds a delinquent deed and a broken tractor. He cannot afford private extraction teams. Identify your employer." "I trace skips," Kessler said. "A Dallas firm hired me to find an accountant named Leo Finch. I tracked Finch to the dry creek bed off County Road 9. Found your boot prints in the dirt. I followed the tire tracks here. You walked into an armed compound for a fugitive. I tracked the paycheck. You share my shipping container," Marisol said. The transaction yielded a poor return. "Aris holds the leverage," Kessler said. "I intend to break the fulcrum." Kessler leaned his back against the wall. He stared into the blackness. He evaluated her responses. She exhibited 0 panic. She wasted no oxygen on tears or pleas for rescue. She assessed the logistics of the situation. Elias Garza raised a pragmatist. "You hold information," Kessler said. "You map the camp." 2 days, Marisol said. "I possess a 1/4-inch gap in my exterior door seal. It faces the generator housing. I watched the rotation. Give me the numbers. 4 men walk the perimeter, Marisol said. 2-hour shifts. They carry M4 carbines. No sidearms. They rely on the rifles. Overwatch. Cameras, she said. Motorized sweeps. 90-second intervals. A camera mounts to the generator cage facing our containers. It pans from the main gate to the holding tanks. You breach the door. The lens catches you in 45 seconds. Dutch commands the guard rotation. The scarred giant, Marisol said. He sleeps in the command box during the day. He walks the line at night. He carries a heavy pistol. He prefers close proximity. Aris plans an extraction, Kessler said. I intercepted a text message at a way station. Command ordered the perimeter to hold until 1800 hours. They break camp tonight. They require Finch's compliance, Marisol said. Aris demands a password. Finch occupies the container on my far side. The third box. Kessler absorbed the architectural layout. Aris aligned 3 shipping containers in a row. Kessler on the right. Marisol in the center. Finch on the left. Finch resists, Kessler said. Finch bleeds, Marisol said. Dutch visits the third box every 4 hours. He utilizes tools. Pliers. A battery terminal. Finch screams. He gives them alphanumeric strings. Aris tests the codes on his laptop. The codes fail. Dutch returns to the box. Aris uses you as leverage. Dutch dragged me into the third box yesterday, Marisol said. Her voice tightened, dropping an octave. The memory forced a physical reaction she fought to suppress. Dutch placed a knife against my throat. He instructed Finch to watch. Finch surrendered a code. It failed. Finch buys time. Finch understands his value drops to 0 the moment the drive unlocks, Marisol said. Aris executes us. He leaves the bodies in the boxes. He locks the padlocks. The desert reclaims the evidence. Kessler checked the luminous dial of his watch. The tritium hands glowed a faint radioactive green in the dark. 1540 hours. 2 hours and 20 minutes remained until Aris's stated extraction window. Time compressed. The heat inside the container continued its steady climb, sapping his hydration, blurring the edges of his focus. We require a breach, Kessler said. We lack tools. I possess a tool, Marisol said. Kessler shifted his weight. He pressed his face closer to the rust hole. Define the tool. When Dutch dragged me from the third box, he holstered his knife, Marisol said. He neglected his belt pouches. I extracted an item during the struggle. I concealed it in my boot. Pass it through the gap. Kessler heard the scrape of leather against steel. A moment later, a metallic object clattered through the jagged rust hole, landing on the floor beside Kessler's knee. He retrieved the object. He traced the geometry with his fingertips. A multi-tool. A Leatherman mutt, designed for military rifle maintenance. It featured heavy pliers, a bronze carbon scraper, and a punch tool. Dutch missed it, Kessler said. Dutch relies on intimidation, Marisol said. He ignores details. Details win. Kessler opened the multi-tool handles. He deployed the punch spike. He ran his hand over the corrugated wall facing the compound lot. He searched for the locking mechanism. Shipping containers feature heavy vertical locking bars, secured by cast-iron cam keepers. Aris augmented the security. He added a massive master lock on the exterior hasp. Kessler could not reach the padlock from the inside. He explored the door seal. The heavy rubber gasket blocked the light, but the steel edge offered a millimeter of play. He inserted the flat pry edge of the multi-tool into the door seam. He applied leverage. The steel groaned. A sliver of blinding, white-hot sunlight pierced the darkness. Kessler squinted, letting his retinas adjust to the glare. He peered through the millimeter gap. He commanded a limited field of view. He saw a section of the dirt lot. He saw the corner of the command container. He saw the steel camera housing mounted on the generator. The camera lens pivoted. It swept past his door, tracking toward the holding tanks. 90 seconds. He evaluated the door hinges. 4 heavy-duty welded steel hinges secured the door to the frame. The hinge pins sat exposed on the exterior. "I locate the hinges," Kessler said. "The pins measure 3 inches, Marisol said. Forged steel. Welded at the top. A weld breaks under focused kinetic energy. You hit the door, you generate noise," Marisol said. "The guards hear metal striking metal. The generators create a high decibel baseline," Kessler said. "I sync the strikes with the compressor cycles." Kessler retracted the multi-tool from the seam. The darkness returned, absolute and suffocating. "I breach my box," Kessler said. "I breach yours." We crossed the lot. "We require Finch," Marisol said. Kessler halted. He processed the demand. Finch represents a corporate asset. Finch slows the extraction. We leave him. "Finch holds the ledger," Marisol said. The steel in her voice hardened. "The ledger proves Julian Croft forged the defaults. The ledger breaks Apex Resource Holdings. My father loses his ranch tomorrow morning at 9 unless I present that data to a judge. We take Finch." Finch incurred severe trauma. Dutch dismantled him. He lacks mobility. We take Finch. Kessler calculated the variables. Dragging a wounded accountant across a fortified compound guaranteed a firefight. It elevated the risk of failure from probable to absolute. But Elias Garza stood in a dirt yard with a broken tractor, fighting a war he could not win. Marisol Garza endured the black box to secure the weapon that could save him. Kessler owed Boyd Aris a debt. We take Finch, Kessler said. He gripped the Leatherman multi-tool. He moved to the hinge side of the steel door. He waited in the dark, listening to the heavy rhythmic throb of the Caterpillar generators, timing the cycle, preparing to break the iron cage. Chapter 10. The Caterpillar generator cycled. A deep bass thrum rattled the corrugated walls of Box 4. Kessler jammed the punch spike of the Leatherman multi-tool into the top hinge of his steel door. He aligned the bronze carbon scraper against the punch base. He waited for the next compressor surge. The diesel engine roared, drowning all ambient sound. He drove the heel of his hand into the scraper handle. Metal ground against metal. The rusted hinge pin shifted a fraction of an inch. Kessler gritted his teeth against the pain in his bruised shoulder. The compressor kicked again. He delivered a second strike. The pin cleared the top weld. He worked the tool down the frame. 3 hinges. 3 pins. He extracted the heavy forged steel cylinders and dropped them onto the ribbed floor. The primary door remained locked on the hasp side. The unpinned hinges offered the only exit. Kessler pressed his back against the wall. He planted his boots against the unpinned edge. He drove his weight into the Corten steel. The heavy door groaned, fighting the friction of the bottom frame. A 2-inch vertical gap opened. Kessler squeezed his head and shoulders through the opening. The Permian sun blinded him. He squinted against the glare. He checked the motorized camera mounted on the generator housing. The lens faced the holding tanks. He pushed his body through the gap. He dropped into the dirt lot. He kept his profile low against the steel wall. He moved to the adjacent container. Box 3. He repeated the mechanical sequence. He synchronized his strikes with the generator noise. He drove the punch tool into the exposed hinge pins. Sweat coated his face, stinging his eyes. He wiped his brow on his torn shirt. The pins popped free. He gripped the edge of the steel door and hauled it outward. Marisol Garza stepped into the sunlight. She wore denim work pants and a faded chambray shirt. Grime coated her face. A dark contusion mapped her left cheekbone, turning the skin a mottled purple. She did not flinch from the glare. She assessed Kessler. She assessed the dirt lot. She exhibited the cold composure of a veteran combatant. "The camera returns in 20 seconds, she said. "We breach box 2, Kessler said. They pressed their backs against the steel panels. The motorized lens swept past, a blind glass eye mounted on a metal stock. The camera registered the locked padlocks on the primary doors. It missed the forced hinges. They reached the third container. Box 2. The smell of raw copper and voided bowels leaked from the door seam. Dutch worked in this space. Dutch dismantled a human being here. Kessler attacked the hinges. He worked with brutal efficiency. The pins hit the dirt. Kessler hauled the door open. The heat inside the box felt dense. Leo Finch hung from a central crossbeam. Dutch utilized a pair of heavy nylon cargo straps, looping the material over the steel strut and securing Finch by the wrists. Finch's boots hovered 2 inches above the ribbed floor. His face resembled a butcher's block. Swollen tissue buried his eyes. Blood soaked his white Oxford shirt, drying into a stiff, rust-colored crust. Marisol stepped inside. She grabbed an empty wooden crate and kicked it under Finch's boots. She wrapped her arms around his waist, supporting his weight. Kessler deployed the friction saw blade on the multi-tool. He severed the nylon straps. Finch collapsed. Kessler caught him, lowering the accountant to the steel floor. Finch gasped. Each breath produced a wet, rattling wheeze. "Finch," Kessler said. "Look at me." Finch opened one eye. A sliver of white in a mask of bruised flesh. He studied Kessler. He focused on the multi-tool in Kessler's fist. "You lack the uniform," Finch whispered. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. "I lack the payroll," Kessler said. "I intend to break you out. I require the context." Finch coughed. He spit a clot of blood onto the steel floor. "Croft built a machine," Finch said. "He identified the aquifer. Not water. Lithium brine. The highest concentration in the hemisphere." "Under the Garza Ranch," Marisol said. She knelt beside him, checking his pulse. "Under the entire basin," Finch said. "Croft manipulated the debt. He orchestrated the defaults. He used Aris and the extraction team to sabotage the infrastructure. Fences cut. Equipment stolen. He starved the ranches to secure the deeds." "You found the paper trail," Kessler said. "I audited the acquisition accounts," Finch said. "I found the ghost shell companies. I downloaded the master ledger. A complete record. Emails. Wire transfers. GPS coordinates of the sabotage strikes. Proof of a corporate conspiracy." "You encrypted the drive," Kessler said. Finch nodded. The motion caused him agonizing pain. A solid-state drive. 256-bit encryption. I ran. Aris caught me. He demands the decryption key. He intends to blackmail Croft, Kessler said. Aris wants 10 million, Finch said. He tortures me for the alphanumeric string. I stall him. I feed him false sequences. The moment the drive unlocks, my heart stops beating. Where is the physical drive? Marisol asked. Aris keeps it in the command container, Finch said. On his desk. Next to his laptop. We steal the drive, Marisol said. We escape the perimeter. We present the ledger to the authorities. My father keeps his land. Finch laughed. A dry, scraping sound originating deep in his chest. You hold a physical drive. Aris possesses an army. You cross the dirt lot, the cameras catch you. The guards shred you with 5.56 rounds. You die in the dust. We require a distraction, Kessler said. I require a hospital, Finch said. Kessler evaluated the accountant. Broken ribs. Probable internal bleeding. Severe dehydration. Finch had 0 combat value. He represented a 160-pound anchor. Aris ordered a lockdown until 1800 hours, Kessler said. He initiates his extraction protocol then. He comes for the final password. He brings Dutch. Kessler checked the dial of his watch. 1610 hours. We own 1 hour and 50 minutes, Kessler said. To accomplish what? Marisol asked. To break the fortress, Kessler said. To acquire the drive. To secure transportation. Kessler looked through the open hinge gap of the shipping container. He studied the dirt lot. He analyzed the holding tanks, the motorized cameras, and the armed perimeter guards. He had a multi-tool and 0 firearms. He tracked the sightline past the cattle corral. He looked at the massive John Deere combine harvester parked in the caliche. He turned to Marisol. Can you hotwire a Caterpillar combine harvester? Kessler asked. Marisol looked at the stolen green machinery. A hard, pragmatic light ignited in her eyes. She wiped the grime from her chin. I rebuilt the starter solenoid on that specific machine 3 weeks ago, Marisol said. I bypassed the ignition cylinder in 60 seconds. Good, Kessler said. We utilize the heavy armor. Chapter 11. Kessler traced the path from the shipping containers to the John Deere combine. 50 yards of open dirt. The motorized camera swept the zone every 90 seconds. 2 perimeter guards had intersecting lines of sight over the northern edge. He processed the timing. We wait for the camera to pan toward the holding tanks. We move fast. Keep the generator housing between us and the eastern guard. Marisol nodded. She secured Finch's left arm over her shoulder. The accountant groaned, his boots scraping the ribbed steel floor. Gravel crunched outside the container. Heavy, deliberate footfalls ground the caliche to powder. The rhythm lacked the steady, mandated pace of a perimeter patrol. This walk broadcasted ownership. The footfalls stopped directly outside the primary door of Box 2. Dutch, Finch whispered. Panic spiked his heart rate. His breathing turned ragged. He visits early. He brought the pliers. Kessler grabbed Marisol's shoulder. He shoved her and Finch toward the rear corner of the container, deep into the black void beyond the reach of the doorframe. Stay flush against the corrugated wall, Kessler said. Kessler flattened his back against the steel panel adjacent to the door hinges. He remained in the blind spot. He gripped the Leatherman multi-tool in his right hand. He locked the punch spike into the open position. He wrapped the Kevlar friction saw around his left fist, leaving 6 inches of wire taut between his knuckles. A metal key entered the exterior padlock. The brass pins aligned. The heavy shackle disengaged with a solid iron click. Dutch slid the locking bar to the left. He grabbed the handle. The heavy steel door swung outward. A vertical shaft of afternoon sunlight sliced into the gloom, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the stagnant air. Dutch filled the threshold. He wore his tactical vest, the customized 1911 pistol secured in the chest rig. He held a pair of heavy iron lineman pliers in his right hand. Dutch stepped into the container. He let his eyes adjust to the darkness. He looked at the central crossbeam. He saw the severed nylon cargo straps dangling in the void. He saw empty space where his victim belonged. Kessler lunged from the blind spot. He drove the Leatherman punch spike deep into the brachial plexus nerve cluster where Dutch's neck met his collarbone. Dutch roared. The nerve strike severed the electrical impulse to his right arm. His hand spasmed. The heavy iron pliers hit the steel floor. Kessler utilized the momentum. He drove his left knee into Dutch's groin. He wrapped his left arm over Dutch's thick neck, bringing the Kevlar wire across the mercenary's throat. Dutch had a mutant pain tolerance. He absorbed the groin strike. He ignored the paralyzed right arm. He dropped his chin, trapping the Kevlar wire against his jawbone before it crushed his windpipe. He threw his left elbow backward. The strike caught Kessler in the bruised right shoulder. White-hot agony flared in the joint. Kessler's grip faltered. Dutch pivoted his massive frame. He grabbed Kessler by the tactical belt, lifted him off the floor, and slammed him into the corrugated steel wall. The impact drove the oxygen from Kessler's lungs. The container shuddered. Rust flaked from the ceiling. Dutch pinned Kessler against the metal. The giant recovered the use of his right hand. He abandoned the dropped pliers. He reached for the 1911 pistol, holstered on his chest rig. Kessler trapped Dutch's wrist. He pressed the multi-tool against the back of Dutch's hand and drove the bronze scraper blade into the metacarpal bones. Dutch grunted a deep animal sound. The mercenary abandoned the draw. He curled his massive left fist and drove a piston strike into Kessler's ribs. Bone cracked. Kessler tasted copper. Dutch drew his arm back for a second strike, aimed at Kessler's skull. Kessler dropped his weight. He slid down the corrugated wall, evading the punch. Dutch's fist hammered the solid steel panel. Skin tore. Knuckles shattered. Kessler planted his boots. He drove his skull upward, executing a brutal headbutt into the underside of Dutch's jaw. Teeth clacked together. The impact rattled the mercenary's brain stem. Dutch staggered backward, his balance compromised. Kessler uncoiled. He wrapped the Kevlar wire around Dutch's throat. He bypassed the jawbone this time. The abrasive cord sank deep into the flesh, compressing the carotid arteries against the cervical spine. Kessler locked his hands together. He pivoted, placing his back against Dutch's chest. He dropped his hips, utilizing leverage to throw the giant off balance. Dutch thrashed. He clawed at the wire. His thick fingers tore his own skin, unable to find purchase under the embedded Kevlar. He slammed Kessler backward against the container wall, trying to crush his attacker. Kessler held the lock. He absorbed the impacts. He maintained the pressure, denying blood flow to the brain. The struggle consumed the remaining oxygen in the tight space. The heat spiked. Sweat saturated their clothing. Dutch kicked the steel floor, his boot striking sparks. 10 seconds. The frantic clawing weakened. 15 seconds. Dutch's knees buckled. Kessler rode the giant down to the floor. He maintained the chokehold for another 10 seconds, ensuring absolute submission. Dutch's eyes rolled back. His body went limp, a dead weight sprawling across the ribbed steel. Kessler unwound the Kevlar wire. He stepped back. He dragged air into his burning lungs. He prodded his ribs, cataloging the damage. A hairline fracture on the floating rib. Painful, but it permitted mobility. Marisol emerged from the shadows. She lowered Finch to the floor. She stared at the unconscious giant, then looked at Kessler. "You killed the executioner," Marisol said. "He breathes," Kessler said. Kessler knelt beside Dutch. He stripped the mercenary of his tactical assets. He withdrew the custom 1911 pistol from the chest rig. He popped the magazine, checked the brass, and slid it back into the magwell. He racked the slide, chambering a .45 caliber hollow point. He engaged the thumb safety and tucked the weapon into his waistband. He stripped 2 spare magazines from Dutch's pouches. He found a folding combat knife. He located a Motorola two-way radio clipped to the vest shoulder strap. He unclipped the radio. The green transmission light blinked. "Aris expects a status update," Kessler said. He checked the radio dial. It sat locked on channel 3. Kessler grabbed the discarded lineman pliers from the floor. He opened Dutch's mouth. He jammed the heavy iron handles between the mercenaries' teeth, utilizing the tool as a gag. He retrieved the severed nylon cargo straps from the crossbeam. He bound Dutch's wrist behind his back, ratcheting the nylon tight. He secured Dutch's ankles with the remaining strap. "The architecture changed," Kessler said. He patted the heavy steel of the 1911 pistol. "You possess a firearm," Marisol said. "You lack an army." "I possess a distraction," Kessler said. Static hissed from the Motorola radio in Kessler's hand. "Dutch," Aris said over the frequency. The voice carried a clipped, impatient edge. "Report. Did Finch provide the sequence?" Kessler depressed the transmit button. He placed his thumb over the microphone inlet to muffle the acoustics. He keyed the mic twice in rapid succession. 2 clicks. An affirmative signal in standard tactical protocol. "Copy," Aris said. "Bring the accountant to the command container. We verify the sequence on the laptop. Perimeter team, initiate Phase 1 breakdown. 30 minutes to extraction." Kessler clipped the radio to his belt. 30 minutes, Marisol said. Aris expects Dutch to walk through his door. He realizes the deception in 3 minutes. He leaves the command container to investigate, Kessler said. He pulls the perimeter guards off the fence line. He collapses his own defense. Kessler turned to Finch. The accountant leaned against the wall, clutching his bruised ribs. "Can you walk?" Kessler asked. "I possess 0 options," Finch said. "We move to the combine," Kessler said. He looked at Marisol. "You require 60 seconds to bypass the ignition." "I require a clear path to the cab," Marisol said. "I clear the path," Kessler said. He walked to the open door of the shipping container. He peered around the steel frame. The dirt lot sat empty. The motorized camera swept the far fence line. The diesel generators roared, masking the ambient noise of their escape. The board shifted. Kessler held the pistol. Aris expected a broken accountant. Kessler stepped out of the black box and into the blinding Permian sun. Chapter 12. Kessler stepped out of the shipping container and into the glare. Heat radiated from the crushed caliche, baking the air inside his lungs. He tracked the motorized camera mounted on the generator housing. The blind glass lens rotated toward the perimeter fence, beginning its 90-second sweep. "Move," Kessler said. Marisol dragged Finch. The accountant stumbled, his heavy boots kicking up white dust. They navigated the open space between the rust-scabbed holding tanks. The twin Caterpillar generators pulsed, vibrating the bedrock. The mechanical roar masked the crunch of their footfalls. Kessler gripped the 1911 pistol. He checked the thumb safety. He kept his finger indexed along the steel frame, outside the trigger guard. They reached the shadow of the central iron tank. The John Deere combine sat 30 yards away. A massive green machine armored in heavy steel plate and agricultural tires the size of boulders. 60 seconds, Marisol said. She measured the distance to the cab. "I cover the approach," Kessler said. A metal door clanged shut. The sharp impact pierced the generator drone. Kessler pivoted. He raised the 1911. Boyd Aris stood on the aluminum stairs of the command container. He held a matte black SIG, MPX submachine gun. He let the weapon hang on a single-point tactical sling. He did not raise the muzzle. He had the relaxed posture of a man who owned the board. Aris held a small rectangular object in his left hand. A solid-state drive encased in brushed aluminum. 2 perimeter guards flanked the command container. They shouldered their M4 carbines. They painted Kessler's chest with red laser dots. "Drop the pistol," Aris said. The command carried no heat. He stated a logistical requirement. Kessler evaluated the geometry. 2 rifles. 1 submachine gun. He held a 7-round .45 caliber handgun. He stood in the open dirt. Marisol and Finch occupied the space behind him, lacking cover. "Dutch failed," Aris said. He descended the aluminum stairs. His leather boots crunched the gravel. "Dutch relies on bulk. Bulk presents a large target in a confined space." "Dutch breathes," Kessler said. "He occupies the floor of Box 2. Bound and gagged." "A temporary condition," Aris said. He stopped 20 feet away. He ignored Marisol. He ignored the bleeding accountant. He focused absolute attention on Kessler. "Drop the weapon, Kessler. The laser dots dictate the outcome. You pull that trigger, my men sever your spine." Kessler engaged the thumb safety. He placed the heavy 1911 in the dirt. "Kick it," Aris said. Kessler nudged the pistol with his boot. It slid across the caliche, stopping near Aris's feet. Aris pocketed the solid-state drive. He shifted his attention to Finch. The accountant leaned against the rusted iron of the holding tank, clutching his broken ribs. "You look terrible, Leo," Aris said. "You broke my ribs," Finch spat a clot of blood into the dust. "I applied standard motivational techniques," Aris said. "You demonstrated remarkable stubbornness. You delayed the timeline. Julian Croft expects a phone call." "Croft wants the ledger," Kessler said. Aris smiled. A precise mechanical adjustment of facial muscles. "Croft desires the illusion of security. Croft believes I operate as a loyal dog. He expects me to retrieve the bone and drop it at his feet." Aris retrieved the solid-state drive from his pocket. He held it up. The aluminum caught the afternoon sun, flashing a blinding reflection. "This drive contains the architecture of a corporate empire," Aris said. "Julian Croft utilized Apex Resource Holdings to steal the Permian Basin. He forged documents. He authorized sabotage. He hired my team to bankrupt generations of cattlemen. He secured a $1 billion lithium brine aquifer for pennies on the dollar." "You possess the proof," Marisol said. She stepped away from Finch. She locked her eyes on Aris. She refused to cower. Aris noticed her. He evaluated her dirt-streaked face and the bruise blooming across her cheekbone. "Elias Garza raised a fighter," Aris said. "I respect the grit. You caught my team cutting your perimeter fences. You photographed the tire tracks. You escalated your threat level. You stole my life." "I secured collateral," Aris said. "Croft files the foreclosure paperwork tomorrow morning." He needed Elias Garza distracted. He needed Elias paralyzed. A missing daughter, paralyses a father. Elias stopped fighting the bank. He focused his energy on the desert. "You brought me here to die," Marisol said. "I brought you here to buy time," Aris said. Croft demanded a clean slate. You represented dirt on the slate. Once Croft files the deed, your survival becomes a liability. The contract stipulates 0 witnesses. "But you altered the contract," Kessler said. Aris turned his attention back to Kessler. "I spent 10 years running logistics in combat zones. I secured oil fields for men who wore bespoke suits and never tasted sand. I bled for corporate profit. Croft pays me a flat salary. Croft earns a 9-figure bonus for the lithium acquisition. Aris tapped the aluminum drive against his palm. I intend to correct the wealth distribution. You extort your employer, Kessler said. I propose a transaction, Aris said. Croft requires this data destroyed. I require $10 million in bearer bonds transferred to a blind account in Zurich. I transmit a sample of the unencrypted ledger to Croft's personal email. I dictate the terms. He pays the fee, or the SEC receives the master file. Croft possesses limitless resources, Finch said. He employs armies of corporate lawyers. He hires men like you. He will hunt you across the globe. Croft fears exposure, Aris said. Exposure kills the lithium deal. The parent company in the Caymans liquidates Apex Resource Holdings the moment federal investigators issue a subpoena. Croft pays the $10 million. He absorbs the cost as a business expense. You require the password, Kessler said. Aris nodded. Finch encrypted the drive. My technicians failed a brute force attack. Finch must unlock the gate. Kessler looked at the 2 perimeter guards. They maintained their firing stances. The red laser dots held steady on Kessler's chest. The generators roared. The cattle in the corral shifted, their hooves kicking against the steel panels. The dust coated the inside of Kessler's throat. You command a dozen men, Kessler said. You demand $10 million to fund your retirement. The math dictates a split. Aris narrowed his eyes. The mechanical smile vanished. You cut the crew out, Kessler said. He pitched his voice to Carey. He ensured the 2 perimeter guards heard the words over the diesel throb. A $10 million score. You share that pie with 12 trigger pullers, the slices get thin. You intend to take the whole pie. Aris shifted his grip on the MPX submachine gun. The casual posture dissolved. He recognized the tactical strike. Kessler weaponized the dialogue. The compensation package remains confidential, Aris said. You booked a single seat on the extraction flight, Kessler said. He fabricated the detail. He relied on human greed to make the lie plausible. You cross the border tonight. You leave the crew holding the bag. Local law enforcement finds a compound full of corpses. The FBI launches a manhunt. Your men take the fall. You drink tequila in Belize. One of the perimeter guards lowered his M4 carbine a fraction of an inch. He shot a glance at Aris. Doubt entered the bloodstream of the mercenary team. Silence him, Aris commanded. The guards hesitated. A half-second of insubordination. They processed the math. They realized Aris had the drive, but they stood in the dirt facing life sentences. Aris raised the MPX. He bypassed the guards. He aimed the black muzzle at Marisol's chest. The negotiation period expires, Aris said. Kessler shifted his weight. He planted his boots in the caliche. He prepared to lunge. The distance measured 20 feet. The submachine gun fired 900 rounds a minute. He had zero chance of crossing the gap before Aris pulled the trigger. Finch, Aris said. You possess 10 seconds. Provide the decryption key. Provide the true sequence. If you feed me another false code, I cut the girl in half. Finch pushed himself away from the iron holding tank. He stood on trembling legs. He looked at Marisol. He looked at the muzzle of the MPX. He wiped blood from his chin. You unlock the drive, he kills us anyway, Kessler said. He leaves no witnesses. I offer a clean death, Aris said. A bullet to the brain stem. You force me to utilize my remaining technicians, you beg for the bullet. Aris racked the charging handle of the MPX. A 9mm cartridge snapped into the chamber. 10, Aris said. Finch squeezed his swollen eyes shut. He braced himself against the iron tank. 9. The Permian sun baked the caliche. The heat shimmer distorted the John Deere combine in the distance. The mechanical drone of the generators filled the silence. 8. Aris adjusted his stance. He tucked the MPX stock against his shoulder. He settled his cheek against the brace. He aligned the iron sights with the center of Marisol's chest. 7. Marisol stood rigid. She refused to close her eyes. She stared down the barrel of the weapon. Finch, Kessler said. Keep your mouth shut. 6, Aris said. His finger applied pressure to the trigger. Chapter 13. 6, Aris said. The perimeter guard on the left shifted his stance. His boot heel ground against the caliche. The steel sling swivel on his M4 carbine clinked against the polymer handguard. A microscopic sound. It pierced the mechanical roar of the diesel generators. Aris heard the hesitation. He registered the fraction of an inch. The guard lowered his muzzle. The seed of mutiny took root. Men facing federal prison require absolute faith in their commander. Kessler fractured that faith. Aris stopped the countdown. He lowered the MPX submachine gun. He let the weapon hang on the tactical sling. You play a desperate hand, Aris said. He bypassed the guards. He directed his focus to Kessler. You weaponize my payroll. You attempt to fracture my operational unit. A tactical maneuver born of zero options. The guards understand the math, Kessler said. They execute a civilian, they cross the line. You board a plane. They catch the federal indictments. I offer a severance package, Aris said. But you complicate the distribution. You possess a unique skill set, Mr. Kessler. You bypassed my forward observation post. You penetrated my perimeter. You dismantled Dutch. I respect the logistics of your survival. Aris turned the aluminum hard drive over in his palm. I prefer pragmatic solutions, Aris said. Violence creates noise. Noise invites scrutiny. We share a common objective. We both wish to leave this caldera breathing. You want the decryption key, Kessler said. I demand the key, Aris said. Finch demonstrates a high pain tolerance when Dutch utilizes crude implements. Finch views Dutch as a blunt instrument. But Finch trusts you. You tracked him. You found him in the dark box. You represent salvation. I represent a collection agency. You represent leverage, Aris said. I offer a revised contract. You acquire the password from the accountant. You verify the sequence. You ensure the drive unlocks. In exchange, I release my claim on the girl. Marisol stepped forward. Her boots kicked the dust. You intend to murder him. I intend to conduct a business transaction, Aris said. He kept his eyes on Kessler. Elias Garza receives his daughter. The daughter returns to the ranch. You collect your skip trace fee from my operational budget. You drive the Ford Raptor back to civilization. We leave the Badlands. A clean break. And Finch? Kessler asked. Finch embezzled corporate data, Aris said. Finch remains. I extract the value from the ledger, and I balance the books. Finch pays the final invoice. Finch sagged against the rusted iron holding tank. His breathing produced a wet, ragged rasp. He clutched his broken ribs. He looked at Kessler. Blood coated his teeth. He kills me, Finch whispered. He executes you the moment the progress bar hits 100%, Kessler said. Correct, Aris said. He had zero shame regarding the parameters. He laid the transaction out like a spreadsheet. You owe the accountant nothing, Kessler. Aris Holdings hired you. I signed the retainer. I dictate the termination of the contract. You trade one compromised asset for the rancher's daughter. You win the board. Kessler evaluated the geometry of the dirt lot. Aris stood 20 feet away. The two perimeter guards flanked him. Their rifles remained trained on Kessler's chest, but the tension in their shoulders betrayed their doubt. Kessler's dropped 1911 pistol sat in the dust, 10 feet out of reach. Behind Kessler, the massive John Deere combine harvester dominated the skyline. 50 yards of open ground separated them from the armored cab. Aris presented a logical trap. Kessler refuses. Aris opens fire. Kessler accepts. He buys time. Time represented the only currency remaining. I require a guarantee, Kessler said. I give you my word, Aris said. Your word lacks market value, Kessler said. You extort Julian Croft. You abandon your men. I require tangible distance. I extract the password. We walk to the combine. We climb into the cab. We start the engine. You test the sequence on your laptop. The drive unlocks. We drive the combine out the front gate. Aris studied the green agricultural machine. He assessed the threat level. A combine harvester lacked speed. It had zero offensive capability beyond its sheer mass. A sniper could put a bullet through the windshield block from the canyon ridge. Acceptable, Aris said. You initiate the sequence. You secure the code. Kessler turned his back on the submachine gun. He walked toward the iron holding tank. He stopped in front of Finch. The accountant looked up. Bruised, swollen tissue masked his terror. You accepted the contract. I calculate the odds, Kessler said. He kept his voice low. He positioned his body between Finch and Aris, blocking the mercenaries' line of sight. I possess the ledger, Finch said. The ledger saves the basin. The ledger holds zero value if you bleed out in the dust, Kessler said. Kessler grabbed Finch by the lapels of his ruined Oxford shirt. He slammed the accountant against the curved iron of the holding tank. The impact produced a hollow boom. Finch screamed, a high, thin sound of absolute agony. His broken ribs shifted. Give me the alphanumeric string, Kessler shouted. He played to the audience. He provided Aris the theater of coercion. Marisol lunged. She grabbed Kessler's arm. Stop. You break him in half. Kessler turned his head. He locked eyes with Marisol. He delivered the message through the intensity of his stare. He needed her to read the play. 60 seconds, Kessler whispered. The words barely cleared his lips. Marisol froze. Her eyes widened a fraction of a millimeter. She processed the tactical shift. Kessler required a distraction. He required the heavy armor of the John Deere. She released his arm. She stepped back, putting another yard between herself and the command container. She angled her body toward the combine. Kessler slammed Finch against the tank a second time. The sequence, Kessler demanded. You give me the sequence, or I let Dutch finish the autopsy. Finch gasped for air. He tasted the copper of his own blood. He read the lie in Kessler's eyes. Finch had the intellect of an auditor. He recognized a shell game. Capital F, Finch gasped. He pitched his voice to carry across the dirt lot. He fabricated a sequence. 7, 4, 0, lowercase x, capital J. Aris pulled a ruggedized tablet from his cargo pocket. He synced it to the aluminum drive in his left hand. He typed the characters into the decryption field on the screen. Kessler maintained his grip on Finch. He turned his head, watching Aris process the data. Keep reading, Aris commanded. He did not look up from the screen. You stall, I pull the trigger. 9, Finch said. Capital A, lowercase m. 4. 2. The perimeter guards relaxed their firing stances. The negotiation superseded the execution. They lowered the stocks of their M4 carbines from their shoulders, letting the weapons hang on their slings. The immediate threat of violence evaporated, replaced by the mundane act of data entry. Kessler tracked Marisol in his peripheral vision. She moved. She did not run. She executed a lateral slide, placing the rusted bulk of the holding tank between her body and the two perimeter guards. The moment she cleared their line of sight, she broke into a sprint. Her boots kicked up caliche dust. She closed the distance to the John Deere. 10 yards. 20 yards. Capital E, Finch said. He watched her run. He kept his voice loud, covering the sound of her boots. 8. 1. 0. Aris hit the return key on the tablet screen. A red error banner flashed across the display. Decryption failed. 2 attempts remaining. Aris looked up. He snapped his attention from the screen to the holding tank. He saw Kessler holding the accountant. He saw the empty space where Marisol Garza stood 5 seconds ago. Aris traced the geometry. He looked past the iron tanks. He spotted the cloud of white dust settling near the heavy treads of the combine harvester. She compromises the perimeter, Aris said. He dropped the tablet into his pocket. He raised the MPX submachine gun. He bypassed Kessler. He aimed the weapon at the distant green machinery. Take the cab, Aris ordered his guards. The two mercenaries raised their rifles. They abandoned their positions near the command container. They sprinted toward the John Deere, their heavy boots pounding the dirt. Kessler released Finch. He achieved the objective. He broke the static formation. He shifted the mercenaries out of position. Chapter 14. Chapter 14. Kessler dropped to his knees. The caliche bit through his torn trousers. He reached the heavy, custom 1911 pistol he had kicked into the dust 10 seconds earlier. His hand wrapped around the polymer grip. He snapped the thumb safety down. The two perimeter guards sprinted toward the John Deere combine, their backs to the command container. Aris stood his ground. He had the MPX submachine gun, but his tactical focus shattered. He tracked the guards. He tracked the combine. He lost track of the man in the dirt. Kessler brought the 1911 up. He punched the heavy steel frame forward, establishing a two-handed grip. He aligned the iron sights with center mass of the trailing perimeter guard. He squeezed the trigger. The .45 caliber hollow point discharged with a deafening crack. The heavy slug caught the mercenary beneath the rear rim of his plate carrier, shattering his pelvis. The guard folded forward, his momentum carrying him face first into the caliche. His M4 carbine clattered across the dirt lot. The lead guard spun. He recognized the threat axis. He brought his M4 up, the red laser dot slashing across the dust toward Kessler's position. Aris pivoted. He leveled the MPX at Kessler. The command container door exploded outward. The heavy steel panel slammed into Aris, catching him flush against the shoulder. The impact threw him off balance. The MPX discharged a 3-round burst into the sky. Aris stumbled off the aluminum stairs, dropping the submachine gun and the aluminum hard drive into the gravel. Dutch filled the doorway. The giant mercenary looked monstrous. He had snapped the lineman pliers Kessler used as a gag. Blood coated his teeth. He had utilized raw, localized muscle power to snap the nylon cargo straps binding his wrists, leaving deep purple friction burns tracking up his forearms. Dutch ignored Kessler. He ignored the dying guard in the dirt. He focused his rage on Aris. "You leave me in a box," Dutch roared. The sound rattled the corrugated steel walls. Aris scrambled backward across the caliche. He reached for the dropped MPX. Dutch closed the gap. He had zero finesse. He operated as a machine, engineered for blunt force trauma. He kicked the submachine gun away. He grabbed Aris by the throat and hoisted the corporate fixer off his feet. "Dutch," Aris choked. He kicked his polished boots against the giant's shins. "I ordered a breakdown. You failed your objective." "You ordered an extraction," Dutch snarled. He squeezed Aris's throat. "I found your travel manifest on the command desk. 1 seat. A private charter out of Midland. You cut the crew." Aris clawed at Dutch's massive hand. He recognized the error. He underestimated the giant's intellect. Dutch lacked tactical sophistication, but he understood the math of a betrayal. Kessler tracked the surviving perimeter guard. The mercenary froze in the center of the lot. He watched his commander dangle from the fist of the team's enforcer. The chain of command dissolved. The promise of a $10 million payout evaporated. Survival superseded loyalty. The guard looked at the massive John Deere combine. He looked at Kessler, holding the heavy .45 pistol. He looked at the access road leading to the front gate. He lowered his M4 carbine. He turned and sprinted toward the main gate, abandoning the compound. Kessler did not fire. A fleeing target presented zero immediate threat. He conserved ammunition. He shifted his aim toward the command container. Dutch held Aris 3 feet off the ground. "Dutch," Kessler shouted. "Drop him." Dutch turned his head. He registered Kessler, holding his own customized 1911 pistol. The giant's scarred face twisted into a mask of pure malice. "You," Dutch said. He threw Aris aside like a discarded piece of trash. Aris hit the dirt, gasping for air, clutching his bruised trachea. Dutch reached into his plate carrier. He bypassed the empty holster. He drew a serrated tactical tomahawk from a sheath mounted on his back. He charged Kessler. Kessler tracked the incoming mass. Dutch had terrifying speed for a man his size. The distance closed. 20 feet. 15 feet. Kessler fired. The heavy recoil of the .45 snapped his wrists upward. The bullet struck Dutch in the chest plate. The ceramic armor absorbed the impact, spider webbing under the kinetic energy. The strike staggered the giant, breaking his momentum, but he did not fall. Dutch roared and swung the tomahawk. Kessler dropped beneath the horizontal arc. The sharpened steel blade whistled inches above his scalp. Kessler pivoted on his left foot, driving his right shoulder into Dutch's hip. He utilized the giant's forward momentum to execute a hip toss. Dutch crashed onto his back. The caliche dust plumed around them. The giant retained his grip on the tomahawk. He lashed out with a brutal kick, his heavy tactical boot catching Kessler in the fractured ribs. Kessler grunted. Searing pain spiked through his torso. He fell backward, losing his grip on the 1911. The pistol skittered across the dirt. Dutch scrambled to his feet. He raised the tomahawk for a downward strike aimed at Kessler's skull. A heavy mechanical roar drowned the sound of the diesel generators. The John Deere combine lurched forward. Marisol Garza bypassed the ignition. The massive diesel engine caught, spitting a plume of black smoke from the exhaust stack. She engaged the transmission. The agricultural behemoth rolled out of the shadow of the holding tanks. She did not steer toward the main gate. She steered the machine directly into the firefight. The combine's massive front tires, designed to crush cornstalks and navigate deep mud, chewed up the caliche. The steel harvesting header, a serrated maw of rotating blades and augers, lowered toward the dirt. Dutch heard the engine. He turned his head. The combine bore down on him. A wall of green steel and churning iron. Dutch abandoned Kessler. He had an animal instinct for self-preservation. He turned and sprinted toward the chain-link perimeter fence, desperate to escape the path of the machine. Marisol tracked him. She spun the steering wheel, utilizing the combine's articulated chassis to cut the angle. The machine surged forward, closing the distance. Kessler rolled onto his stomach. He grabbed the dropped 1911 pistol. He tracked the chaos. Aris crawled through the dust. The corporate fixer reached the aluminum hard drive. He snatched the device, shoved it into his pocket, and staggered to his feet. He abandoned his submachine gun. He abandoned his mutinous crew. He sprinted toward the command container, seeking the shadow of the server racks. Kessler dragged himself up. His fractured ribs throbbed with every breath. He checked the magazine of the 1911. 5 rounds remaining. He looked at the combine. Marisol drove the giant machine toward the fence line, forcing Dutch into a dead sprint. He looked at the holding tank. Finch remained huddled against the rusted iron, clutching his chest, a broken spectator to the violence. The compound descended into anarchy. The fragile hierarchy Aris constructed shattered under the weight of greed and survival. Kessler racked the slide of the 1911. He moved toward the command container. Chapter 15. The sun clipped the western canyon ridge. The ambient temperature dropped. Shadows stretched across the caliche, turning the caldera floor the color of bruised iron. Photoelectric sensors mounted on the generator housings registered the loss of daylight. Relays clicked. The compound's automated grid engaged. Banks of halogen bulbs atop the aluminum stanchions snapped on. 2,000 watts of white-hot glare eradicated the dusk. The dirt lot transformed into a high-contrast surgical theater. Shadows became sharp black wedges. Kessler reached the aluminum stairs of the command container. He gripped the handrail. He kept the 1911 pistol leveled. Across the lot, automatic gunfire erupted. The off-shift mercenaries woke up. 5 men emerged from the secondary shipping containers. They wore unlaced boots and tactical undershirts. They carried M4 carbines. The blinding halogen lights disoriented them. They assessed the perimeter. They saw the dead guard. They saw the John Deere combine harvester chewing through the chain-link fence. They reacted with trained aggression. They shouldered their rifles. They opened fire on the green agricultural machine. 5.56 tracer rounds ignited the dusk. Streaks of red phosphorus stitched across the dirt, impacting the combine's heavy steel armor. Sparks showered the caliche. The rounds flattened against the reinforced plate, protecting the cab. Marisol did not flinch. She engaged the combine's auxiliary work lights. 6 high-intensity LED beams blasted from the cab roof, blinding the shooters. She dropped the transmission into reverse. The heavy treads crushed the mangled fence line. Kessler ignored the crossfire. He mounted the aluminum stairs. He gripped the handle of the command container door. Locked. The magnetic strike plate hummed, securing the steel panel. Kessler stepped back. He aimed the 1911 at the keypad housing. He squeezed the trigger. The .45 caliber slug shattered the plastic casing and pulverized the circuit board inside. The magnetic lock disengaged with a dead click. Kessler kicked the door inward. Refrigerated air rushed over him, carrying the scent of ozone and burning plastic. Boyd Aris stood beside the folding tactical desk. He wielded a heavy steel claw hammer. He brought the hammer down on the open Panasonic laptop. The tempered glass screen spider-webbed. The liquid crystal display bled black ink across the spreadsheet. Aris raised the hammer, and struck the hard drive chassis of the machine. Plastic shattered. Motherboard components crushed under the forged steel. "You destroy the bridge," Kessler said. He kept the pistol aimed at Aris's chest. "I sever the digital connection," Aris said. He did not drop the hammer. "Croft installed tracking software on this terminal. I purge my footprint. You possess the aluminum drive." "The drive contains the leverage," Aris said. "This terminal contains my location." Outside, the firefight escalated. A stray burst of M4 fire raked the exterior of the command container. The armor-piercing rounds punched through the corrugated Corten steel. Shafts of white halogen light pierced the bullet holes. The rounds slammed into the server racks along the back wall. Sparks cascaded from the ruptured chassis. Cooling fans shrieked and died. Acrid gray smoke filled the refrigerated air. Aris utilized the distraction. He threw the claw hammer. The spinning steel mass flew at Kessler's face. Kessler ducked. The hammer struck the door frame, gouging the metal. Aris lunged for a red emergency panel, bolted to the wall beside his desk. He slammed his palm against the glass cover. The glass broke. He depressed the heavy brass button beneath it. Klaxon screamed. A mechanized voice announced a countdown over the intercom. "Fire suppression sequence initiated. 10 seconds to discharge." "You leave the fortress," Aris said. He retreated toward the back of the container. "I leave with the ledger," Kessler said. He raised the 1911. Aris bypassed the server racks. He reached a reinforced ventilation hatch set into the rear wall. He threw the locking levers. He kicked the hatch open. 3, 2, 1. Nozzles mounted in the ceiling hissed. The system discharged. It did not spray water. It released halon gas. The heavy chemical agent flooded the room, engineered to starve a fire by displacing the oxygen in the confined space. A thick white fog consumed the container. It hit Kessler's lungs like inhaled ground glass. He gagged. His eyes watered, blinding him. The oxygen vanished. His chest hitched, desperate for air that no longer existed in the room. He fired a blind shot into the fog toward the ventilation hatch. The recoil snapped his wrist. The bullet struck steel. Kessler dropped to his knees. The heavier halon gas settled near the floor. He squeezed his eyes shut. He crawled backward, navigating by touch. His fingers found the door frame. He hauled himself out of the toxic box, spilling onto the aluminum stairs. He collapsed against the railing. He dragged the hot, dusty Permian air into his lungs in ragged gasps. The oxygen fueled the fire in his fractured ribs. He opened his eyes. The dirt lot resembled a war zone. The halogen floodlights cut through clouds of caliche dust and diesel exhaust. Tracer rounds crisscrossed the compound. The mercenaries realized their rifles lacked the kinetic energy to penetrate the John Deere's armor. They shifted their tactics. They aimed for the combine's massive rubber tires. Marisol recognized the tactical shift. She spun the steering wheel. The combine lurched, presenting the heavy steel harvesting header as a shield. She drove the machine toward the rusted iron holding tanks. Kessler scanned the lot. He searched for Leo Finch. The accountant remained near the central tank. The crossfire pinned him. Bullets struck the iron cylinder above his head, raining rust flakes onto his bloody shirt. Finch curled into a fetal position, covering his head with his hands. He lacked the strength to run. Kessler wiped the tears from his eyes, clearing the residual sting of the halon gas. He checked the 1911. 3 rounds left. He looked at the rear of the command container. Aris had a head start. Aris held the encrypted drive. The corporate fixer navigated the dark perimeter, utilizing the chaos to mask his extraction. Kessler faced the definitive choice. He hunts Aris into the Badlands, or he secures the accountant and the rancher's daughter. He looked at the John Deere combine. Marisol rammed the machine into a stack of empty shipping crates, crushing the wood, creating a barricade between the mercenaries and the holding tanks. She laid on the industrial horn. The deafening blast cut through the gunfire. She signaled Kessler. Kessler made the choice. He abandoned the pursuit. He left the aluminum stairs. He sprinted across the illuminated dirt. He kept his head low, tracking the red tracer lines. He reached the holding tank. He grabbed Finch by the belt. "Stand up," Kessler commanded. Finch groaned. "They shoot us." "They shoot the green machine," Kessler said. "We use the blind spot." Kessler hauled the accountant to his feet. He supported Finch's weight. They moved behind the rolling cover of the John Deere combine. Marisol matched their pace, edging the massive harvester toward the compound's motor pool on the southern fence line. They needed speed. The combine provided armor, but it lacked the velocity required to escape the Badlands. Kessler mapped the motor pool through the dust. He spotted his tarp-covered Ford Raptor parked in the ravine just outside the broken perimeter fence. He had the keys. He had the transport. He needed to cross the final 30 yards of illuminated kill zone. Chapter 16. The John Deere combine harvester crawled across the dirt lot. Kessler and Finch walked in the blind spot behind the rear axle. The massive rubber tire, standing 6 feet tall and caked in white caliche, provided a rolling fortress wall. Bullets struck the heavy steel chassis above their heads. The impact sounded like a mechanic striking an anvil with a ball-peen hammer. Marisol steered the machine toward the southern edge of the compound. The motorized halogen floodlights cast deep, shifting shadows ahead of the green behemoth. Kessler tracked the geometry of the motor pool. He saw his tarp-covered Ford Raptor parked in the ravine beyond the perimeter fence. To reach the truck, they needed to cross the temporary cattle corral. 36 Brangus steers occupied the pen. The gunfire panicked the herd. 1,500-pound animals surged against the welded steel pipes, their hooves churning the dirt into a localized dust storm. They smelled the cordite. They smelled the blood in the caliche. The combined mass of bone and muscle pressed against the structural limits of the enclosure. Marisol recognized the obstacle. She recognized the weapon. She did not steer the combine around the pen. She aligned the massive agricultural machine with the center of the corral. She reached for the hydraulic control lever inside the cab. She pushed it forward. The front harvesting header dropped. The 30-foot expanse of serrated steel blades and rotating augers descended to ground level. She engaged the primary drive mechanism. The steel teeth spun, creating a mechanized blur of heavy iron. "Stay tight to the tire," Kessler told Finch. "She breaks the cage." The combine hit the corral. The spinning steel header chewed into the welded iron pipes. Sparks exploded into the night air in a brilliant cascade. The agricultural blades, designed to shear thick stalks of winter wheat, severed the metal stanchions. The heavy iron gate collapsed inward, chewed to shrapnel by the auger. The barrier vanished. The Brangus herd found the breach. The panicked steers surged forward, a tidal wave of black hide, sweeping horns, and sheer kinetic mass. They exploded out of the pen. They did not flee into the empty Badlands. The noise of the combine drove them back toward the center of the compound. Absolute chaos consumed the dirt lot. The stampede hit the mercenary perimeter lines. 36 terrified steers, each weighing 3/4 of a ton, blind with panic, trampled everything in their path. A mercenary stepped out from behind a shipping container, raising his M4 carbine. A Brangus steer dropped its head and drove a horn into the man's chest plate. The impact hurled the shooter 10 feet through the air. He hit the dirt and did not get up. The rest of the herd pounded over his position. The gunfire ceased. The mercenaries abandoned their tactical formations. They scrambled up the sides of the shipping containers and the generator housings, desperate to escape the crushing hooves. Dust choked the halogen light, reducing visibility to zero. A thick piece of sheared corral pipe jammed in the combined spinning auger. Metal shrieked against metal. The massive drive belt, transferring power from the diesel engine to the header, snapped with the sound of a cannon shot. The engine over-revved, whined in protest, and stalled. The combine jerked to a violent halt. Kessler grabbed Finch. He shoved the accountant against the massive rear tire. The cab door kicked open above them. Marisol climbed down the metal access ladder. She dropped into the dust beside Kessler. "The drive belt tore," Marisol said. She breathed hard. Sweat streaked the grime on her face. "The machine served its purpose," Kessler said. He pointed through the churning dust cloud toward the ravine. "The Raptor sits 60 yards away. We move through the herd. The dust covers the heat signatures." They abandoned the dead combine. They plunged into the stampede. The air tasted of pulverized limestone, animal sweat, and unburned diesel fuel. Kessler kept his left hand on Finch's belt, dragging the accountant forward. He kept the customized 1911 pistol raised in his right hand. Shadows moved in the dust. Panicked cattle brushed past them, the rough hide scraping Kessler's arms. He navigated the chaos, utilizing the moving animals as dynamic cover. They cleared the edge of the stampede. They reached the perimeter fence line. The combine had crushed the chain link, leaving a tangled mat of wire on the ground. A massive shape detached itself from the shadow of the primary diesel fuel bladder. Dutch blocked the path to the ravine. The giant mercenary looked like a casualty of war who refused to die. A dark purple bruise circled his throat where the Kevlar wire bit the flesh. The ceramic strike plate on his chest carrier sported a jagged spiderweb fracture from Kessler's previous gunshot. Blood leaked from his shattered knuckles. He held the serrated tactical tomahawk in his left hand. His right arm hung useless, the nerve cluster paralyzed from Kessler's punch-spike strike. Dutch did not speak. He abandoned military protocol. He abandoned the chain of command. He operated on pure, localized hatred. He charged. Kessler shoved Marisol and Finch backward. He brought the 1911 up. He possessed 3 rounds in the magazine. Dutch closed the distance. The giant understood the geometry of the gunfight. He kept his massive head tucked behind the fractured ceramic plate of his vest, protecting his vital organs. Kessler aimed low. He fired. The .45 caliber hollow point struck Dutch in the left kneecap. The heavy slug shattered the patella. Dutch's leg buckled. His momentum carried him forward, crashing to the dirt. He rolled, utilizing the kinetic energy to launch himself back upward. He ignored the ruined knee, pushing off his good right leg. He swung the tomahawk in a brutal horizontal arc. Kessler stepped back. He tripped over the crushed chain-link fence. His boots tangled in the heavy wire mesh. He fell backward onto the caliche. The tomahawk blade missed Kessler's throat by an inch. The steel struck the heavy iron valve of the diesel fuel bladder behind him. The impact sheared the brass fitting. High-pressure diesel fuel erupted from the bladder. A thick, localized geyser of flammable liquid sprayed across the dirt, drenching the fence line, drenching Kessler, drenching the giant. Dutch ripped the tomahawk free from the ruined valve. He raised it for a downward strike, to split Kessler's skull. A stray bullet from the panicked mercenaries across the lot struck the crushed perimeter fence. The copper jacket sparked against the steel wire. The spark met the vaporized diesel fuel. Fire ignited. A wall of orange flame erupted along the fence line. The heat hit Kessler like an open oven door. The burning diesel spread across the dirt, following the flow of the ruptured bladder. The flames engulfed Dutch. The diesel fuel soaked into his tactical vest, his cargo pants, the mesh of his webbing. He became a pillar of fire. The giant did not stop. He burned, and he swung the tomahawk downward. Kessler lay trapped in the wire. He raised the 1911. He bypassed the ceramic chest plate. He jammed the muzzle directly under Dutch's jaw, pressing the hot steel against the giant's burning throat. Kessler pulled the trigger twice. The heavy rounds shattered the mandible and severed the brain stem. The lights went out behind Dutch's eyes. The giant collapsed. His massive burning bulk fell forward, pinning Kessler to the ground. The tomahawk slipped from the dead fingers, the blade burying itself in the dirt inches from Kessler's ear. Kessler choked on the black smoke. The fire licked at the edges of his boots. He shoved his hands against Dutch's chest plate, fighting the dead weight. His fractured ribs screamed in protest. He could not move the giant. Hands grabbed Kessler's tactical belt. Marisol braced her boots against the dirt. She grabbed Kessler's webbing and pulled. She utilized the leverage of her legs, dragging Kessler backward, sliding him out from under the burning corpse. Kessler scrambled to his feet. He patted down his smoldering pant legs, suffocating the embers. He looked at the burning giant. Dutch lay in the pool of flaming diesel, the fire consuming the tactical gear, erasing the evidence of the violent life. Kessler turned his back on the flames. He looked down the ravine. The tarp-covered Ford Raptor sat untouched in the shadows. "We leave the fortress," Kessler said. He holstered the empty 1911. He grabbed Finch by the belt. Together, they navigated the steep descent into the ravine, leaving the burning compound, the panicked cattle, and the shattered mercenary army to the Permian night. Chapter 17. The canvas tarp slid off the Ford Raptor, pooling in the limestone gravel. Kessler wrenched the passenger door open. He shoved Finch onto the leather seat. The accountant collapsed against the center console, a loose collection of fractured ribs and ruined tissue. He left bloody handprints on the dashboard plastic. Marisol scrambled into the rear cab. She pulled the heavy door shut. Kessler vaulted behind the steering wheel. He punched the ignition button. The 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 engine caught on the first revolution. He slammed the transmission into drive. He left the headlights off. He navigated the ravine, using the ambient glow of the burning compound spilling over the canyon ridge. The Raptor's Fox racing shocks swallowed the deep ruts. The heavy off-road tires bit into the loose shale, throwing rock chips against the wheel wells. They crested the ridge. The plateau opened before them, a flat expanse of baked earth stretching toward the blacktop of Route 67. A rhythmic thrumming beat the air above the caldera. The sound lacked the mechanical drone of the diesel generators. It possessed a sharper, chopping cadence. It vibrated the tempered glass of the Raptor's windshield. Kessler braked. He rolled down his window. A Bell 429 Global Ranger helicopter dropped out of the night sky. The twin-engine aircraft wore a matte black corporate paint job, devoid of registration numbers. A high-intensity directional spotlight, mounted beneath the nose, slashed across the dirt lot of the fracking site. The rotor wash hit the burning diesel fuel along the fence line. The downdraft fanned the flames, whipping the fire into a localized tornado of orange heat and black smoke. The helicopter hovered 10 feet above the command container. Boyd Aris emerged from the shadows of the server racks. He ignored the stampeding cattle and the scattered, panicked mercenaries. He sprinted toward the aircraft. He clutched the aluminum hard drive against his chest like a shield. The Bell 429 flared. The pilot set the skids down on the roof of the corrugated steel box. Aris grabbed the landing skid. He hauled his body upward. He reached the cabin door, wrenched it open, and threw himself inside. The pilot pulled pitch. The turbine engines whined, escalating in pitch. The helicopter banked hard to the east, abandoning the mercenaries to the fire and the desert. The aircraft became a receding red navigation light against the stars. Kessler watched the light vanish. He rolled the window up. He reached for the headlight dial. Twin beams of LED light pierced the darkness, illuminating the empty plateau. He pressed the accelerator. The Raptor surged forward. Aris won the board, Marisol said from the back seat. She stared out the rear glass, at the glow of the burning camp. He extracted the leverage. He owns the physical drive, Kessler said. He kept his eyes on the uneven terrain. He initiates his extortion protocol tomorrow. Croft pays the $10 million to keep the sabotage a secret. Croft files the foreclosure on your father's ranch at 9 o'clock. The machine keeps grinding. Finch coughed. The spasm racked his broken frame. He spit a mouthful of crimson saliva into the passenger side footwell. Aris owns a piece of metal, Finch said. His voice carried the rasp of torn vocal cords. Kessler glanced at the accountant. He holds the encrypted ledger. I audit multinational conglomerates, Finch said. He leaned his head against the cool glass of the passenger window. I track billions of dollars across offshore shell companies. You assume I risk my life on a single piece of flash memory? Kessler eased his grip on the steering wheel. He let the truck find its line through the brush. Explain the redundancy. I pulled the master files from the Apex mainframe 3 weeks ago, Finch said. I transferred the data to the aluminum drive. Then I drove to a public library in Midland. I rented a computer terminal. I uploaded a mirror image of the entire ledger to a secure Amazon Web Services server. Marisol leaned forward, gripping the back of Kessler's seat. You put the proof in the cloud. I built a ghost copy, Finch said. I encrypted the server bucket with a separate alphanumeric string. The aluminum drive Aris holds is a decoy. A tangible object designed to keep the hunting dogs focused on the wrong trail. Aris believes he holds the crown jewels, Kessler said. Aris holds a decoy, Finch said. He cracks the encryption on that drive. He finds 500 gigabytes of random, corrupted tax code. The real ledger sits on a server farm in Virginia. The adrenaline began to ebb, replaced by the deep aching throb of Kessler's fractured ribs. The architecture of the game shifted again. They lost the physical battle in the dirt, but the accountant secured the strategic war. You require an internet connection, Kessler said. I require a laptop and 10 minutes of uninterrupted Wi-Fi, Finch said. I execute the command prompt. The server emails the unencrypted ledger to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI field office in Dallas, and the state attorney general. Croft goes to federal prison, Marisol said. Croft faces indictment on 50 counts of corporate fraud, extortion, and racketeering, Finch said. The parent company liquidates Apex Resource Holdings to contain the blast radius. The foreclosures halt. The mineral deeds revert to the surface owners. Kessler merged the Raptor onto the cracked asphalt of Route 67. The suspension smoothed out. The tires hummed against the blacktop. He looked at the digital clock on the dashboard. 2015 hours. The county clerk opens the Ocotillo courthouse at 9 tomorrow morning, Marisol said. She fell back into the leather seat. Croft files the paperwork the minute the doors unlock. Once the county seals the deed transfer, reversing the action takes 5 years of civil litigation. My father lacks the capital to fight a 5-year war. We beat the clock, Kessler said. Ocotillo lacks a functional hospital, Marisol said. She gestured to Finch. He requires a trauma center. He requires IV fluids and a chest X-ray. We drive to Midland. We waste 3 hours. We miss the filing. Kessler reached into his cargo pocket. He pulled out the ruggedized smartphone he took from the dead mercenary at the gas station. He tossed it onto Finch's lap. "Check the signal," Kessler commanded. Finch picked up the phone. His blood smeared the thick rubber armor. He tapped the screen. 3 bars, Finch said. "LTE network. Can you access the AWS server from a mobile browser?" "The interface is cumbersome," Finch said. "The screen size limits my coding speed. But the portal remains accessible." "Execute the transfer," Kessler said. Finch unlocked the device. He opened the web browser. His thumbs hovered over the digital keyboard. He hesitated. "The moment I hit send," Finch said, "I confess to corporate espionage. I confess to data theft. The FBI issues a warrant for my arrest." "You face a white-collar minimum security facility," Kessler said. "Or you face Boyd Aris realizing he holds a blank drive. Aris will hunt you until he puts a bullet in your brain stem. The federal government offers a steel door and 3 hot meals." Finch stared at the glowing screen. He mapped his future. He chose the steel door. His bruised thumbs struck the glass. He navigated to the secure portal. He entered the 14-character alphanumeric sequence. A progress bar appeared on the screen. The LTE connection handled the command packet. The bar filled, shifting from gray to bright green. Transfer complete. Finch dropped the phone onto the center console. He closed his eyes. "The emails are in their inboxes," Finch said. "The attachments contain the sabotage coordinates, the forged loan terms, and the lithium surveys. Julian Croft's empire burns at sunrise." Kessler turned the steering wheel. He bypassed the southern route toward Ocotillo. He pointed the Ford Raptor north, aiming the grill toward the interstate. "Where are we going?" Marisol asked. "Ocotillo belongs to Sheriff Riggins," Kessler said. "Riggins protects the corporate interests. We walk into his substation with a battered accountant. He locks us in a holding cell and calls Julian Croft." "My father is alone at the ranch," Marisol said. "Your father holds a Winchester rifle," Kessler said. "He knows the terrain. He survives the night. We need to cut the head off the snake." Kessler accelerated. The speedometer needle climbed past 80. "We drive to Dallas," Kessler said. "We bypass the local corruption. We find Julian Croft in his glass tower before he boards his private jet. We hand-deliver the receipt." Chapter 18. Kessler steered the Raptor onto the highway shoulder. He engaged the brakes, letting the heavy truck coast to a halt on the gravel. He shifted into park. He turned in the driver's seat and looked at Leo Finch. The accountant slumped against the passenger door. Blood saturated his collar. A wet, hollow rattle accompanied each inhalation. A fractured rib compromises the chest cavity. A punctured lung fills with fluid, drowning a man from the inside. "We delay Dallas," Kessler said. Marisol leaned between the front seats. She assessed the accountant's pale skin and blue-tinted lips. "His respiration rate drops," Marisol said. "He needs oxygen. He needs a chest tube." "A 6-hour transit kills him," Kessler said. He dropped the transmission back into drive. He cut the steering wheel, executing a U-turn across the empty asphalt. "We secure him at your property. We bring the law to the front porch." Kessler drove the back roads, avoiding the state patrol routes. He navigated the network of farm-to-market blacktops, utilizing the Raptor's heavy suspension to maintain speed over the deteriorating infrastructure. They reached the Garza boundary line. The 3 wind turbines carved the night sky. The fiberglass blades produced a deep, rhythmic thrumming, vibrating the air. Kessler killed the headlights. He relied on the lunar glow to guide the truck past the rusted cattle guard. He parked near the corrugated steel barn. He left the engine running, keeping the cab climate-controlled for Finch. Kessler stepped out. He kept his hands visible. He scanned the deep shadows beneath the house's porch awning. Elias Garza detached himself from the darkness. The rancher held the lever-action Winchester. He kept the stock braced against his hip, the barrel angled toward the caliche. He wore the same grease-stained pearl-snap shirt from the afternoon. He possessed the rigid posture of a man who spent 10 hours expecting corporate mercenaries to breach his perimeter. Marisol opened the rear door. She stepped into the dirt. Elias lowered the rifle. He let the weapon hang by his side. He crossed the yard, his boots dragging in the dust. He closed the distance and wrapped his arms around his daughter. He buried his face in her shoulder. He offered 0 words. He offered 0 tears. The physical contact confirmed the survival. The basin bred a stoic resilience, demanding action over emotion. Elias stepped back. He framed her face in his calloused hands. His thumbs traced the dark, swollen contusion mapping her cheekbone. "You endured," Elias said. "I found the mechanic," Marisol said. She gestured toward Kessler. He broke the cage. Elias turned to Kessler. The rancher extended his right hand. Kessler gripped it. The handshake possessed the texture of rough sandpaper and the pressure of an industrial vice. "The debt registers," Elias said. "I lack the capital to clear it." "Keep your money," Kessler said. He walked to the passenger side of the Raptor. He opened the door. "I brought a liability. He requires medical extraction." Elias looked at Finch. The accountant's head lolled against the leather headrest. "I possess a landline," Elias said. "I call the county paramedics." "The county dispatch routes all emergency calls through the Ocotillo Sheriff's substation," Kessler said. "Riggins monitors the radio traffic. He intercepts the ambulance. He buries Finch in the Badlands before the paramedics arrive." Kessler retrieved his satellite phone. He punched in the direct mobile number for Deputy Chloe Soto. 2 rings. A click. "Soto," the voice answered. "Alert. Professional. Awake at midnight." "Kessler," he said. "I stand in the Garza dirt yard. I hold the fugitive. I hold the proof of the apex extortion. I require a badge." "Riggins ordered me to write up a cartel violence report for your burned truck," Soto said. "He demands the narrative closed." "Riggins owns a forged narrative," Kessler said. "I offer a federal indictment. Drive to the ranch. Bring a trauma kit. Leave the siren off." He disconnected the call. 10 minutes passed. The wind turbines hummed. Kessler walked to the barn. He found a massive, galvanized steel fuel transfer tank situated next to the empty equipment bays. He unspooled the rubber hose, removed the Raptor's gas cap, and squeezed the aluminum nozzle. Diesel cascaded into the truck's tank. He needed a full reservoir for the interstate run. Tires crunched the caliche at the perimeter boundary. A Ford Explorer Interceptor rolled into the yard. The headlights swept over the barn, illuminating the dust motes. The cruiser stopped. Deputy Soto stepped out. She wore her uniform shirt untucked. She rested her right hand on the butt of her Glock. She evaluated the scene. She registered the armed rancher, the battered daughter, and the private investigator pumping diesel fuel. She walked to the open door of the Raptor. She shined a mag light into the cab. The intense beam washed over Finch's ruined face. "You promised an accountant," Soto said. "You delivered a casualty. Dutch extracted a toll, Kessler said. He racked the fuel nozzle and secured the truck's gas cap. He approached the cruiser. Finch executed a data upload. He transferred the Apex master ledger to a secure Amazon cloud server. He emailed the decryption sequence to the FBI field office in Dallas. The file contains Julian Croft's blueprint. Soto lowered the flashlight. She stared at Kessler. The magnitude of the revelation registered in her posture. The local land grab escalated into a multi-agency federal investigation. Riggins protects a collapsing house, Soto said. Riggins becomes irrelevant, Kessler said. Finch requires a federal marshal. He requires an intensive care unit. You bypass county dispatch. You utilize your encrypted state frequency. You contact the Texas Rangers. You demand an armed medical transport. The Rangers take 2 hours to mobilize a tactical medical unit, Soto said. She checked Finch's carotid pulse. He stabilizes here. I hold the perimeter. Marisol walked to the cruiser. She crossed her arms over her chest. The ledger hits the federal servers. Croft faces an indictment. The machine stops. Soto turned to Marisol. The deputy shook her head. The federal machine grinds, Soto said. Bureaucracy requires time. The FBI assigns an agent. The agent reviews the data. The agent petitions a federal judge for a warrant. The process consumes 72 hours. Elias tightened his grip on the Winchester. The county clerk opens the Ocotillo courthouse in 9 hours. Croft files the foreclosure deed at 9 o'clock, Soto said. The clerk stamps the paper. The county transfers the title. The federal investigation eventually invalidates the deed, but the civil litigation traps the land in probate for half a decade. Apex locks the gates. The bank seizes your remaining assets. Kessler absorbed the timeline. The digital ghost copy guaranteed Croft's eventual destruction, but it offered zero immediate salvation for the Garza family. The process requires a manual override, Kessler said. Soto narrowed her eyes. You suggest an alternative legal strategy. I suggest applying direct pressure to the fracture point, Kessler said. He walked to the Raptor's driver's side door. Croft commands the Ocotillo lawyers from his office in Dallas. He holds the authority to rescind the foreclosure petition. He issues a single phone call. The clerk shreds the deed. Croft sits in a fortified corporate tower, Marisol said. He commands private security. Security relies on protocols, Kessler said. Protocols crack under localized kinetic pressure. Kessler opened the truck door. He reached into the cab, grabbed the ruggedized smartphone from the center console, and tossed the device to Soto. She caught the heavy rubber casing. The phone belongs to an Apex mercenary, Kessler said. The device contains the GPS coordinates of the fracking compound. It contains the text message logs authorizing the abduction. Provide that phone to the Rangers. It builds the foundation of your local case. You leave your bounty behind, Soto said. She gestured to the unconscious accountant. You forfeit your fee. Aris canceled the contract, Kessler said. He climbed behind the steering wheel. He pulled the heavy door shut. He rolled down the window. Where are you going? Elias asked. The rancher stepped toward the truck. I own a full tank of diesel, Kessler said. I hold an empty pistol. I possess 6 hours of darkness. I drive to Dallas. I explained the new math to Julian Croft. He engaged the transmission. Kessler steered the Raptor out of the dirt yard. He left the rancher, the deputy, and the dying whistleblower in the shadow of the wind turbines. The truck hit the blacktop. He pinned the accelerator to the floorboard, aiming the grill toward the neon glow of the distant city, racing the dawn across the Texas expanse. Chapter 19. The Ford Raptor crossed the Trinity River Bridge. Sunrise ignited the glass facades of the Dallas skyline, turning the skyscrapers into pillars of manufactured fire. Kessler navigated the morning commuter traffic. He bypassed the main entrance of the Apex Resource Holdings Tower in the Harwood district. He steered the battered truck down a concrete ramp toward the subterranean parking structure. A steel barrier arm blocked the entrance. A card reader pedestal stood on the driver's side. Kessler idled the Raptor 10 yards back. He waited. A silver Porsche Panamera descended the ramp. The driver presented an RFID badge to the scanner. The barrier arm raised. Kessler pinned the accelerator. The Raptor surged forward, tailgating the Porsche. He cleared the sensor threshold before the heavy wooden arm dropped, infiltrating the executive garage. He parked the mud-caked truck between a pristine Range Rover and a Tesla Model S. He killed the engine. He checked the rearview mirror. Soot coated his face. Dried blood flaked on his collar. He smelled of diesel smoke, oxidized iron, and stale sweat. He did not attempt to clean his clothes. The grime served a tactical purpose. It weaponized his presence. It disrupted the sterile corporate aesthetic. He stepped out of the truck. He bypassed the primary elevator bank. He located the steel double doors of the freight elevator. He pulled a leather lockpick case from his back pocket. He selected a tension wrench and a half-diamond rake. He inserted the tools into the Medeco cylinder lock on the service call panel. He applied torque. He raked the brass pins, feeling for the shear line. The pins clicked into position. The cylinder turned. The heavy steel doors parted. Kessler stepped into the industrial cab. He pressed the button for the 42nd floor. The elevator ascended in absolute silence. The doors opened. Kessler stepped into a carpeted service corridor. He pushed through a set of frosted glass swinging doors and entered the executive suite. The environment shifted. Thick, sound-dampening wool carpet absorbed his footfalls. Recessed LED panels cast a shadowless artificial glare. The climate control maintained a precise 68 degrees. The air smelled of citrus cleaning solvent and expensive espresso. It was 7:30 in the morning. The open-plan workstations sat empty. Kessler walked the length of the floor. He reached the corner office. A solid oak door featured a brushed brass nameplate, Julian Croft, Chief Acquisitions Officer. An executive assistant occupied a minimalist reception desk outside the door. She typed on an ergonomic keyboard. She wore a tailored silk blouse. She looked up. Her fingers stopped moving. She processed the intrusion. She registered the torn tactical trousers, the bruised jawline, the violent contrast of the man standing in her pristine airspace. Her eyes darted toward a red panic button mounted beneath the lip of her desk. Kessler raised a single finger to his lips. He locked eyes with the assistant. He projected absolute lethal intent. The assistant froze. She abandoned the panic button. She pressed her back against her mesh office chair. Kessler opened the oak door. He stepped into the corner office. He pulled the door shut and engaged the brass deadbolt. The lock clicked with the heavy precision of a bank vault. Julian Croft stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the awakening city sprawl. He wore a bespoke charcoal suit. A platinum Rolex encircled his left wrist. He held a bone china coffee cup. "I asked for the revised Permian contracts, Sarah," Croft said. He did not turn around. Sarah remained at her desk, Kessler said. Croft pivoted. Coffee sloshed over the rim of the cup, staining the deep pile carpet. Croft evaluated the threat. He lacked the scarred bulk of a mercenary, but he possessed the insulated confidence of massive wealth. He retreated behind his mahogany desk. He reached for the telephone receiver. Kessler crossed the room. He slammed his palm over the phone cradle, pinning Croft's hand to the plastic, severing the dial tone. "You touch a button, I break the wrist," Kessler said. Croft released the receiver. He stepped back. He interlaced his fingers and rested his hands on his leather desk blotter. He recovered his composure. "You bypassed building security," Croft said. "You trespassed on private property. You face a felony charge." "I face a federal judge," Kessler said. "You face the board of directors. I prefer my odds." Kessler reached into his cargo pocket. He extracted a cracked iPad. He borrowed the device from Elias Garza before leaving the ranch. He placed the tablet on the mahogany blotter. He tapped the screen. The Apex Resource Holdings master ledger materialized. Rows of digital numbers. GPS coordinates of sabotage targets. Wire transfer records routing funds to dummy corporations. Croft stared at the spreadsheet. The artificial tan vanished from his face, leaving his skin the color of wet ash. "Finch signed a non-disclosure agreement," Croft said. The legal defense sounded hollow, an absurd reflex in the face of absolute ruin. "Finch suffered 3 broken ribs and a collapsed lung," Kessler said. "Boyd Aris utilized a pair of lineman pliers to extract the password. Aris failed. Aris fled the Badlands in a chartered helicopter. He holds a decoy drive. He calls this office at noon to extort you for $10 million. Croft sank into his ergonomic leather chair. The structural integrity of his empire dissolved. The firewall collapsed. "Finch uploaded the ghost copy to an Amazon cloud server," Kessler said. "He emailed the decryption sequence to the FBI field office in Dallas 2 hours ago. The federal agents brew their morning coffee right now. They open their inboxes. They read the blueprints." Croft looked at the tablet. He looked at the Dallas skyline. He calculated the zero-sum game. "What do you want?" Croft asked. Kessler checked the luminous dial of his watch. 8:15, Kessler said. "The Ocotillo County clerk opens the courthouse doors in 45 minutes. You drafted the Garza foreclosure. You hold the authority to rescind the petition." Croft shook his head. "The process initiated. The bank automated the transfer. Reversing a foreclosure requires signatures. It requires legal filings." Kessler leaned over the desk. He invaded Croft's airspace. "You dictate an email," Kessler said. "You instruct your local counsel in Ocotillo to withdraw the foreclosure petition. You copy the county clerk. You copy the Garza legal representation. You release the deed." "I release the deed. The FBI still raids this office," Croft said. "I gain nothing." "You gain a head start," Kessler said. "You stall the Garza foreclosure, I unlock this door. I walk to the freight elevator. You possess 45 minutes before the federal agents arrive with the warrants. You own a private jet at Love Field. You own offshore accounts. You run." Croft stared at the Rolex on his wrist. The second hand swept across the dial. He weighed a decade in a federal penitentiary against a life in exile. He recognized the checkmate. Croft pulled his wireless keyboard across the blotter. He opened his email client. "Dictate the terms," Croft said. "To the Ocotillo County clerk," Kessler said. "Effective immediately, Apex Resource Holdings withdraws all claims against the Garza property. We release the lien. We cancel the foreclosure." Croft typed. The mechanical clatter of the keys filled the silent office. He attached his digital signature to the document. He added the local council and the Garza attorney to the carbon copy line. "Send it," Kessler said. Croft clicked the mouse. The email vanished from the outbox. Kessler picked up the cracked iPad. He shoved it back into his cargo pocket. He turned away from the mahogany desk. He walked to the oak door, disengaged the brass deadbolt, and stepped into the reception area. The executive assistant remained frozen in her chair. Kessler walked past her. He pushed through the frosted glass doors, leaving the sterile corporate suite behind, carrying the survival of the Garza ranch back to the dust and the heat of the Permian Basin. Chapter 20. The Ford Raptor crossed the Ocotillo County line at 2 in the afternoon. The Permian heat reclaimed the truck, baking the steel chassis. Kessler lowered the windows. The sterile, climate-controlled air of the Dallas high-rise purged from the cab, replaced by the scent of hot asphalt, crushed sage, and ozone. He parked in the cracked lot outside the sheriff's substation. The ambient temperature radiated off the blacktop, warping the air. Deputy Chloe Soto leaned against the grill of her Ford Explorer. She held a thick manila folder. She lacked the severe, regulation posture from yesterday. She radiated a cold, functional satisfaction. She watched Kessler kill the engine. He stepped onto the asphalt. His boots crunched the scattered safety glass in the lot. The county clerk unlocked the courthouse doors at 9, Soto said. She found an email from Julian Croft, time-stamped 8/20. Apex Resource Holdings withdrew the foreclosure petition. They released the lien. The clerk struck the action from the docket. The machine stopped, Kessler said. The machine shattered, Soto said. She opened the manila folder. She extracted a printed Federal Dispatch. The FBI raided the Apex Tower in Dallas at 9:15. Tactical agents breached the executive suite. They found an empty corner office, a destroyed laptop, and a broken telephone. Croft ran. He owns a private Gulfstream jet, Kessler said. The FAA intercepted his flight plan, Soto said. Air traffic control diverted the aircraft to Miami. Federal marshals blocked the runway. Croft wears steel handcuffs. The Justice Department froze the Apex corporate accounts. They seized the Cayman Island shell companies to halt the asset hemorrhage. Kessler leaned his hip against the Raptor's hot quarter panel. And the accountant? A medevac helicopter transported Finch to a trauma center in El Paso, Soto said. Surgeons inserted a chest tube. He breathes through a ventilator, but his heart beats. 2 armed U.S. Marshals guard his ICU door. He surrendered the ghost copy of the master ledger. He secured an immunity deal. Boyd Aris remains a variable, Kessler said. Soto closed the folder. She slapped the cardboard against her thigh. Aris represents a ghost. Interpol flagged his passport. Cartel border checkpoints possess his photograph. He occupies a hostile geography. He carries an encrypted hard drive filled with garbage data. He possesses 0 leverage and 0 sanctuary. Kessler processed the logistics. The geometry of the violence resolved into neat, legal angles. The corporate threat localized, then evaporated under federal pressure. Sheriff Riggins filed his retirement papers at noon, Soto said. He cited sudden health concerns. He cleaned his desk, surrendered his badge, and drove south toward the border. You inherit a quiet basin, Kessler said. The basin ignores the law, Soto said. She adjusted her duty belt, securing the weight of the Glock 19. The basin respects leverage. You shifted the fulcrum. I mopped the spill. Kessler opened the truck door. He climbed behind the steering wheel. He offered 0 sentimental farewells. Soto required none. The transaction concluded. He drove the county highway. He navigated the turnoff, crossing the rusted cattle guard onto the Garza property. The three massive wind turbines carved the blue sky, their fiberglass blades producing a deep rhythmic thrumming that vibrated the bedrock. The solar array on the barn roof drank the afternoon glare. The John Deere combine harvester sat in the dirt yard. Bullet strikes cratered the green steel armor, exposing the bright, naked iron beneath the factory paint. Marisol Garza stood beside the massive front tire. She wore a heavy leather apron over her denim work shirt. She held an industrial angle grinder. She pressed the abrasive disc against a jagged piece of bullet-torn sheet metal on the harvesting header. A shower of bright orange sparks cascaded into the dust, accompanied by the high-pitched shriek of friction. A mile away, Elias Garza operated the John Deere 4440 tractor. He dragged a heavy steel grater blade across the caliche, repairing the deep ruts left by the mercenary extraction vehicles. The diesel exhaust plumed into the air. The rhythm of the ranch returned. The labor resumed. Kessler parked the Raptor near the corrugated steel barn. He cut the ignition. Marisol disengaged the angle grinder. The mechanical whine spun to a heavy silence. She pushed her safety goggles onto her forehead. She wiped a streak of black grease from her jaw. The contusion on her cheekbone darkened to a deep mottled violet. She evaluated Kessler. She noted the lack of fresh bullet holes in his vehicle. "The bank manager called my cell phone," Marisol said. She let the heavy grinder hang by her side. "He apologized for a clerical error regarding our loan structure. He offered a fixed interest rate to retain our business." Croft lacked the time to argue with the branch managers, Kessler said. "I demanded a 0% restructuring," Marisol said. The manager agreed. He possessed an intense desire to avoid federal subpoenas. Kessler looked at the unfinished roofline of the steel barn. He watched a red-tailed hawk circle the thermal updrafts above the badlands. "The parent conglomerate will restructure the assets," Marisol said. She placed the angle grinder on the combine's heavy steel step. She stripped the leather apron from her neck, tossing it over the tire. "They will send a new acquisitions officer by spring. Someone to run the next operation in the next county. They will mount a second campaign." "I know," Kessler said. "I require a logistics and security consultant," Marisol said. She did not smile. She stated a fact, offering the proposition without sentiment or inflection. She placed the offer in the air to see what he did with it. "I pay less than the Dallas conglomerates. I offer worse hours. The risk assessment remains high." Kessler looked north toward the ridge. The Badlands caught the low afternoon light. The red rock formations held their shadows, serrated and indifferent to human commerce. The geography offered zero comfort and demanded absolute resilience. "I trace skips," Kessler said. "I hunt bounties. I operate on short-term contracts." "You broke a corporate army," Marisol said. "You establish your own parameters. Is that what you do? Or is that what you think you must do?" Kessler considered the distinction. He looked at the woman standing in the dirt yard, armored in denim and grease, holding her ground against billion-dollar empires. "I recognize zero difference," Kessler said. Marisol processed the answer. She gave a single nod. She pulled the safety goggles over her eyes. She gripped the angle grinder, thumbed the power switch, and returned the abrasive disc to the torn steel. The sparks illuminated the shadows beneath the heavy machinery. The metallic shriek drowned the wind. Kessler left the offer suspended in the noise. He turned his back on the sparks. He returned to the Raptor, opened the door, and climbed into the cab. He started the engine. He put the transmission in gear. He drove out of the dirt yard, leaving the ranch to the Garzas and the Permian dust. He aimed the grill toward the state highway, chasing the desolate horizon across the flat expanse of the Texas edge. The end.